All right, I want to call tonight's Select Board meeting to order. It's August 9, 2022. The time by my watch is 6 p.m. If I could ask everyone in the room to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance, I would appreciate it. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we have a relatively full agenda this evening, so we're going to start off with, I guess, some straightforward items right out of the gate. I think the town clerk is here, and we're going to talk about the state primary warrant and election staff associated with that. So, Ms. Graffio, if you want to come forward. And I think board members all should have a draft copy of the actual warrant itself. Is there any comment you want to offer on that at all?
Just straightforward.
Yep. Okay. No changes in the precincts or locations or anything like that for this election, right?
As compared to our annual town election, correct.
Okay.
So the same precincts. I'm going to go over a little bit in more detail once we get through the...
Okay. All right. So if I could ask for a motion to approve the warrant for the state primary election to be held on Tuesday, 6th day of September 2022, and polling hours will be 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. here in the town of Tewksbury.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The chair will vote aye as well, so that would be a unanimous vote. Okay, so now we have a little more detail from you relative to proposed election staff.
So yes, it is a request to appoint a slate of election staff beginning in this August, through August of next year. They would be working the state primary, town meetings, the state election in November, as well as the annual town meeting, the annual town election next April.
Okay, all right. If I could ask, and I know you're not going to have an exact number, but ballpark this for me, how many people on this proposed list would be new as election staff? Do you have any idea?
I would say about 5.
So the bulk of the folks are repeat customers?
Right. And there are some alternates that we kind of feed when there's an open seat.
Yeah.
We kind of feed off the alternate list.
I was curious if COVID impacted the staffing, and it appears not.
Right. So we are very lucky that we have a dedicated team of election staff that continue to come year after year. I do think that a lot of people stepped up during the 2020 COVID and learned, and from that point, there are a lot of new people to the list as well, and repeats. Okay.
All right. Do any of my colleagues have any specific questions about the proposed roster? Okay, could I ask a motion? We'll take it as one large slate, and this list has been posted in the agenda, so if I could ask for a motion to approve the election staff for 2022 to August of 2023 upon the recommendation of the town clerk.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion made and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I'll make that unanimous as well. I do want to note for the benefit of the public that a number of people on the list, and I am going to call out their names, they have issued required disclosures to the town for various reasons. All are generally in one large category of having employment with the town or the school department in another capacity, and their service as an election worker is outside of their more normal employment relationship. So I just want to mention that Meredith Fahey, Lorraine Carrier, Barbara Flanagan, Jacqueline Powers, all have filed the required disclosures. I also missed Alexandra Lauder as the last person. They've all filed disclosures referencing that fact. Yes.
Dina Callahan also.
Where is that one? All right.
One second.
Okay. All right, thank you for catching that. All right, so that is just noted for the record. We don't have to vote on those, but these employees have taken that step that's required. They've been signed off by the manager in their respective department, and we'll put that into the record.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Through you to the town clerk, do we need to appoint the police chief to appoint the slate of police details? Is that something that you requested?
So that is another piece of this request. So the Votes Act now puts the authority of appointment of police officers onto the Board of Selectmen. And so that is included in the cover letter request. It is my recommendation that we have one police officer per precinct. We have 8 in the sub-precinct. And appoint the police chief to actually schedule the staff according to their union rules.
Does the sub-precinct also need a police officer?
No.
Okay. I didn't think so.
Okay. So in light of that additional information, let me ask for a motion to authorize the chief of police here in Tewksbury to staff the election precincts as appropriate.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I'll vote in the affirmative as well, so that would be unanimous. What else do you have for us tonight?
So I thought this would be a good time to help explain some of the changes of the election laws that just came forward through an election reform law titled the Votes Act. I've published a voter options guide on our website, which I also would like to get the word out to residents that it gives you multiple options to vote. So chronologically, I'd like to start with one of the options is vote by mail. So all registered voters in the Commonwealth should have, at this point, received a postage prepaid postcard, which you could return to your town clerk's office. It has our address on it, and that would prompt us to mail you out a ballot. So voting by mail is one of the options now. That is a permanent option, which began during COVID. So once you receive that, if you decide that you want to vote by mail, there's 2 things that I want to be sure to get across. That people remember to sign the application. It's important that the application is signed, as well as if you are an unenrolled voter, also known as an independent voter, that you choose your party ballot. We are getting some applications back that are not signed, and we also are getting a significant number of voters that are unenrolled that don't pick their party ballot. So in Massachusetts, if you're registered as a Democrat, you need to vote on the Democratic ballot. Same thing if you're a Republican, you can only vote on the Republican ballot. But if you're unenrolled, commonly known as independent, you must choose which party ballot you want us to send you for the primary. So that's something that I wanted to get out to voters. We are keeping them aside, and we're putting everybody in so they'll get a ballot for the November election, because it's not party specific. But if they can contact us, we don't have contact numbers for all voters. We're reaching out where we can. If somebody puts their telephone number on there, we're reaching out and letting them know to get back to us. But if you applied for a vote by mail ballot and haven't received it yet, that might be one of the reasons why. Also,
Was the postcard prepared by the Secretary of State relative to language, or did the town prepare that? And I'm asking because is there a way in the future to modify that to be a little more explicit?
So it was prepared by the Secretary of State's office. It's also one of the mandates of the law that this postcard gets sent out to anybody that hasn't previously applied
Right.
for an absentee ballot. And then there's going to be another mailing of those prior to the November general election for anybody that hasn't returned them. You will get another one. And again, if you don't want to vote by mail, then you just
Right.
get rid of it.
Right.
You don't have to use it.
All right. I was just curious because I don't remember the language really like being clear that you must pick, Democrat or Republican ballot.
Right.
It may have. I don't recall,
Yeah.
but
You have to kind of be looking for it.
yeah, must be
Be
the
aware of it.
operative word. Yeah, exactly.
All right, so those, so that's the vote by mail. So far, we've mailed out close to 3,000 vote by mail ballots to this point, which is no small feat. And I want to shout out to my awesome and amazing team for helping and getting that done. The election staff workers come in on a regular basis to help us with that process. There's a lot of goes into mailing all those ballots as well as receiving them. And we're going to be doing some tabulation activities prior to the election as well, which we'll talk about a little bit further. So the second option to vote for the fall 22 elections is in-person early voting. And in-person early voting is going to begin on Saturday, August 27th. And it's going to be here at Town Hall. You don't need to fill out an application if you are planning to come early in person. So you would just come in, vote your ballot, and we will have a ballot box that it will go into. It doesn't get counted during that process, but it does get counted in a central tabulation on a different day. So Saturday, August 27th from noon to 6 here at Town Hall. We'll be having in-person early voting. And then Monday, August 29th through Friday, September 2nd, office hours. So that's 7:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. here at Town Hall. We'll be in-person early voting. And then the third option is to vote in person on Election Day. And as you stated, the state primary is Tuesday, September 6th. The polls are going to be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. And we encourage voters to know what precinct they'll be voting in prior to arrival at the polls. So we do have the ability to check your precinct online. A lot of this is on the front page. I'm really going to start pushing these through. I'm trying to break it down into bits and pieces and put things out on a timely basis because it gets a little bit confusing when it all gets thrown at you at once. All of the ability to check your precinct online, to verify your party enrollment, there's a link for that. To change your party enrollment, which it's important that that happens prior to the last day to register to vote, which happens to be the first day to early vote. That's August 27th. So the law has now made consistent the last date of register is always going to be 10 days prior to an election or a town meeting consistently. So that's good. And then you can also view sample ballots online as well. I do want to talk a little bit about the changes in precincts related to the recent 2020 federal census. And so it's important. A lot of people, we've changed the numbers from 1A, 2A, 3A. It's consistently 1 through 8 now, with that one sub-precinct 5A. So Tewksbury voting location, most people have changed, if it's either the number or the location. So it's a good idea to double check, and you can always feel free to email or call the town clerk's office if you can't find that link. But precincts 1, 5, and 5A are at the senior center. Precinct 2 and 6 are at the recreation center. Precinct 3 and 7 are here at Town Hall, and precincts 4 and 8 are at the library. And again, If anybody has any questions, any confusion, don't know where to go, we're staffed all day on election day from prior to when the polls open to when they close. So please feel free to call us, contact us, and we'll make sure you get to where you need to be to vote. So that concludes my voter options for the fall 2022 elections, and if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Anyone at this side of the table have any questions?
I was just going to say, good Lord, you almost need a PhD now to vote. It's crazy.
It's
So,
confusing.
yeah, let's go to the website and do our homework. And okay, thank you very
But
much.
the good thing is that there are many options, and we encourage everybody, regardless of what option you choose, to get out there and vote and have your voice be heard.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
Sure. Okay. All right, so you have the votes you need to move forward?
I do.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next item pertains to the Tewksbury home builds and some lots that are town-owned. Mr. Panelitis, welcome.
Want me to do the presentation? It's only 5 slides. I can just talk about it if you want to.
We have the presentation.
You have the presentation.
If it
I'll
helps.
just Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I was just saying, it's only a few slides. I don't know if you want me to bother with the hookup. We can just talk through it if you'd like.
We can work through it. Yeah.
Sorry. So as you all know, we were here back in April, right after the election and the reorg. We had been awarded the 3 RFPs for affordable housing. There were Florence Ave, Rebecca Lane, and Cart Path Road. So I just wanted to update you where we were and also, again, request some action as far as the transfer of those properties to our organization, because that requires action of this body before the town manager can do the transfer. Specifically, right now, we're holding off on Cart Path Road. There seems to be some questions about lot lines, and so we are working with the folks in that area to figure out what's possible. And there's also a little more wetland on that property than we thought there was. So we're now focused on Florence and on Rebecca. Nothing has changed as far as the plan. We need to go in front of the ZBA for both of those. We've started that process for Florence. We're waiting a little bit on Rebecca. There's some questions about infrastructure that we want to clarify before we move forward. The assistant town manager, Steve Sadwick, has been great, and his staff helping us get through that process. So we are on the August meeting for the Florence Ave property. We're holding off, as I mentioned, for a little while on Rebecca Lane, because that requires us to combine a couple lots. It's a little more complicated, and there's some more infrastructure issues there. So what that has done, as you saw in the original presentation from back in April, I provided the timeline again for 3 properties with 5 homes eventually. We're now looking at, as I said, we're holding off on Cart Path, and we're focusing now on Florence first, because it is a little cleaner process to get going on Florence than it is on Rebecca, because we have to combine some lots, we have to figure out the infrastructure. We intend still to go forward with Rebecca and get 2 homes there, but Florence is a more, let's say, a little quicker path. And so we hope to get the transfer done this month so that we can then go in front of the ZBA with standing, because technically we don't own the property yet. It's hard to go to the ZBA and tell them we want to do something to a property we don't own. And then we'll work on Rebecca Lane through the year, and then have those 2 homes next year. So that's where we're at, and I'll just note that I did provide our last year's, I think it was the FY21 report to the AGO, or to the Attorney General's office, which we are required every year to submit as a public charity, and we provided that for financial records for the organization. We have not filed FY22. We can provide those once we do that, if you'd like.
So, Mr. Panelitis, just for clarity's sake, are you looking for support tonight to transfer all 3 properties, even though you're deferring on 2 of the 3 for?
It would be ideal for me, for our organization, if for the 2, Florence and for Rebecca Lane lots. And the Rebecca Lane lots is 3 lots. It's not a single lot, whereas Florence is a single lot. For Cart Path, we have to continue to work on that. It would make sense to transfer it to us, and then if we can't do anything with it, to then have to give it back to the town. So that wouldn't be worth it.
So you'll come visit us again when you...
We'll come visit you again, I promise.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Are there questions from the board? Okay, Mr. Montori, can you just enlighten us one more time on just the formality of making that happen?
As far as approving the lots, so, I mean, this has been a long process for us. We went through an RFP to sell the land. Habitat Bill was the only, I think, one of maybe 2 responses, but they met all the criteria. So everything has been taken care of. Town council's been involved. So we've done all of the required procurement on it. We have all the information we need, and I would recommend approving what Mr. Panelitis is requesting, which is the Rebecca Lane parcels as well as Florence. And Florence is one we would like to see move along also, because it's a property that is in need of improvement, and the neighborhood would like to see that happen also. Cart path will take a little bit longer, but we can revisit that. And that's even because we're not looking to get Shawshing Tech involved and other builders involved, that can wait a little bit longer.
Yeah.
All right, so you're literally looking for a vote to approve transfer of title to the Tewksbury...
I would look, I think you would look to approve the sale of the land, because that's what it is, to Tewksbury Habitat build, and authorize me to sign all of the paperwork necessary for the sale.
Okay. All right. If there's no other questions from my colleagues, could I ask for a motion to do, let's make sure Mr. Sadwick is...
Ask.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so Mr. Sadwick's reminding me that there was some back tax issues for both of those 2 properties, and so the original proposal was, and part of our RFP response was, any back taxes would be covered out of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. And the number was actually quite substantial for Florence, less so for Rebecca, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I'd have to pull it up.
Which is surprising.
That was going to be my next question.
Because Florence
You beat me to it.
is the smallest property, but I think it was 6 figures in back taxes.
I'll have to look up that number. I know that the money essentially stays with the town and moves from the housing trust to the general fund to pay the taxes. So it stays with the town. It's not as if, and actually, it just goes to paying off the taxes on behalf of the nonprofit. We've done it. We did it for the other parcels that they've received.
I want to say 140-ish.
Yeah, that's right. 137
For
for
Florence.
Florence.
And like 17 or 18,000 for one of the Rebecca lots, not because there are, again, 3 lots, so only one of them had back tax issues.
Okay. All right, so let me ask my colleagues, we'll take 2 votes. We'll vote, actually 4 votes. We'll vote to transfer, or to authorize the sale of the property on Florence Ave. We'll take a vote on the payment of outstanding taxes on that property, and then we'll do the same on Rebecca Lane, if that's acceptable.
Mr. Chairman, question to the town, through you, the town manager. Mr. Montori, so if we have, we'll call it 140 in back taxes on that Florence Ave home, do we know what the market value is of that existing property?
I can look it up.
Okay. My only question is, I'm very supportive of when we can give lots to an organization like yourself, and especially if there's a little bit of back taxes, and take that out of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. But if this is a property that could be sold on the market, and the town could actually recoup that plus some, that may be a more beneficial option.
So I'm just looking at Florence Ave now. The back tax is around $149,000, approximately $149,493 for Florence. No matter who bought the land, the taxes would have to be paid off. And the assessed value for 2022 is $247,200.
So if that were sold on the market for, call it 220,
Could be, it's a small lot, you have to demolish the house, because there's an existing structure there. Clean up the lot.
fair enough. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Wellman, I think you were going to ask a comment or offer a comment or a question.
My only question is if we need to, I'll make it in the form of a motion, just to put the specific address or the lot number in the motion. That was
Okay.
my only.
Do we have the specific
Technicality.
address for each of the two
Well,
properties?
Florence, yeah, 96.
Yeah, so it's 97 Florence Ave, it's lot 94, map 102.
Lot 94,
102, yep, dash 102.
okay. And the other one?
Lot 106, 18 and 19, and 11 and 12.
Sounds right.
Based on your.
Let's double check it. Let's
Yeah.
make sure we got it right.
I'm just looking at it now, hold
Careful
on.
to convey the wrong.
You have a homeowner on that.
Yeah, so it's
We'll take another half.
106-11, 106-12, 106-18, and 106-19. There's four of them. Is that correct? Yep.
Got that right?
Yep.
Okay. And do you have an estimate on the outstanding taxes,
Yep.
Mr. Montori?
1 second. I don't see an outstanding tax. Why don't you work on your Florence, and I'll get you that, if you want to do that.
That sounds good. Okay, let me, if there's no further discussion at the board level, let me ask for a motion to approve the sale of 97 Florence Ave, Lot 94-102 to Tewksbury Home Build.
So moved?
Second.
I have a motion made and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, and I will vote in the affirmative, so that would be 4-1 for purposes of our record keeping. And then let me ask for a motion to approve the request to pay the outstanding taxes through the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
So moved?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And the chair will vote aye, acknowledging the vice chair's vote in opposition, so that would be a 4-1 vote.
Mr. Chairman, the outstanding taxes for the Rebecca Lane lots is $16,671.26.
Thank you. Okay, so let me ask for a motion to approve the sale of the following lots on Rebecca Lane to the Tewksbury Home Build. It's lot 106-11, 106-12, 106-18, and 106-19.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion made and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. That would be a unanimous vote. And then, as I indicated, could I have a motion to authorize the use of the $16,671 and some change?
I would just say back taxes, because every day a little bit of interest grows.
Okay, so pay back taxes using funds from the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that'll be recorded as a 5-0 unanimous vote. All right, so good luck on those two.
Thank you. I'll put you all on our volunteer list, get you out there.
And I guess you'll be in touch with us on the other one when the time is ready.
Yeah, we will. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.
All right, next up, we have, I think, a representative or representatives from Soldier On. Gentlemen? welcome.
Thank you.
If you don't mind, just, I know we've met at least one of you in the past, so if you don't mind, just for the record, give us your names and where you're from. One of you must be Mr. Buckley.
Yeah, I'm Bruce Buckley, CEO of Soldier On. I'm from Pittsfield, Western Mass.
Good for you. Thank you.
And I'm Peter Graham, also with Soldier On, and I live in Leeds, Mass.
All right. A little ride today, huh?
I'll be in
Hopefully the
Boston
AC was
tomorrow.
working.
I drive a lot, so.
No worries. All right, so we received your correspondence dated August 5. I know that triggered this discussion here this evening. So for the benefit of residents who are following this, if you don't mind, if you could summarize the state of affairs and what your specific ask is, and then we can open it up for discussion.
Yes, no, we've made some fantastic progress. I'll start on the big picture. The 21 units of veterans housing, when we applied to the state for funding back in December, was budgeted to be just over $7 million for the total development cost. And in that request, we had asked for $850,000 from the town of Tewksbury. Tewksbury had already committed $350,000, and some of that increase, of course, was due to COVID price increases. And those price increases kept going, and the total development cost on the project at this point is $8.3 million, and we've sought additional funds from a variety of sources, and for the Tewksbury ask, we have increased our ask by $100,000. So with a $600,000 ask that is pending, that would bring the entire Tewksbury commitment to $950,000, which is just over $45,000 per unit. And the entire development has already gotten $6.1 million committed, so this is very much on the finishing stretch. The state announced its awards on the 19th of July, which we were successful in getting. We also received $650,000 from the Federal Home Loan Bank, and Soldier On is committing over $470,000 as well to make the development a possibility.
All right. So I'm sure my colleagues have some questions, so let me open that up.
All right.
Mr. Mackey?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Glad to see you guys back here. Glad to see we were able to get some alternate funding sources. Glad we're moving on. My questions aren't much different than they were before, so I'll open with, let's say that we are able to commit to the total of $950,000 in total. How do we know that we're good at that point? And there's not a follow-on ask for another $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000?
Sure. Well, the state, there's a few things working in our favor right now. There's never been as much capital dollars coming down from the federal government to create permanent supportive housing as there is right now. A lot of it has been kind of caught up in ARPA monies working their way through state programs and processes. And at this point, we still do have a pending request for $1,550,000 from, which is a gap filler from what we requested from the state back in our application in December to where we are now. But all of, I can't read the tea leaves. I wish I could. But I can say that Tewksbury, with this commitment, will more than check the box, which is what we have to do. And, when we come into a situation where we have gap filling needed, the state's first place is, where else can you go? Because they want to leverage and get as many housing units built across the state. So I can only look to my left to say, would we come back again?
No, I think we would find an alternate way. I mean, this will be the 7th project that we've developed. So I think we've been through the process enough over the last 13 years that hasn't been the case. I also have a lot of confidence in these numbers as being pretty solid because they're very recent.
Yeah.
The cost numbers. We have a great working relationship with Groom Construction, who is relatively local here. I think they're out of Salem, maybe, but they've done a lot of affordable housing, and I'm confident that their numbers are pretty solid.
That's right.
Who knows what you find sometimes? I mean, we've certainly encountered issues, but we don't really see that at this stage of the game. A year ago, I would have been a lot less able to answer with that confidence.
Perfect, thank you. And the follow-on for that is, if we are not able to approve this tonight, what's the next steps? What does that mean for the project?
Well, we were awarded from the state, and so we have to, and we've already gone back to them to let them know with this very same budget that's in front of you, that this is our gap, and that just as Bruce mentioned, these are real numbers that we just got in July, and baked into that, of course, is an anticipated start date. So, as far as it becomes a, chasing down either ARPA money from the state, but we also had, in our original budget, had put in the additional $500,000 request from Tewksbury. So.
And that was the request that we had denied last time, right?
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
So was that represented how was that represented in your applications?
The application was already in, so this was a pending request. When a development like this that has several sources, you never are able to really have all of your unknowns known at the time of application. So when we applied for the state funding, it was shown as 350 was committed, 500 was pending, and as we left it last November with the board, it was, a lot of the messaging was, let's see how it goes with what the state is coming up with. And at this point, they've come through with their, as I had indicated, they've come through with their funds.
Awesome. And just a little education, if you can help me out, permanent debt. So on this budget sheet,
Yep.
can you help me understand what that permanent debt line item is?
Yes. So it's similar to anybody's home mortgage. So in an ideal scenario, when you're developing affordable housing for permanent supportive clientele, you don't want to have any permanent debt. So that is part of that's the maximum that the development can afford to pay on a monthly basis on a fully amortizing mortgage. So that number, you'll notice, had gone down, and that's a combination of interest rates, which put a higher cost on things, means you also have less money to put towards that debt. So we kind of are a combination of the inflation, costs to operate the property, as well as the rate, the interest rate has meant that number had to be lower.
Understood. Yeah, it was.
I can add a little bit to that, maybe, at least from my perspective. All of the buildings that we run a lot of programs, and they're all funded differently. The permanent housing piece of what we do is basically ideally funded by the rents that you receive. And it's a HUD-driven system that the rents are the rents that HUD dictates. And it gives, we offer a lot more service than those rents generally provide. So we're always kind of behind the 8 ball, but we figure out how to do it, and that's what we've been doing. And, you know, the revenue that we're gonna get is 21 units times whatever the monthly rent is a month, and we're gonna pay all the expenses, but we also provide a meal a day that we'll be bringing in because we go to Boston every day and Brighton with meals from our Agawam kitchen, or we go twice a week and distribute them every day. We do transportation, so there'll be a van on site and there'll be a driver that we find, hopefully a local individual that drives or somebody that lives in the building. And there'll be case management, there'll be staff there every day. So a lot more than an apartment building offers is what our model is, and it's consistent with all of our properties. So, you know, I think that's where the interest cost and what we can, you know, it just becomes a big weight on the project and how we're able to do all that we do.
Oh, absolutely. And for the record, as a veteran myself, I've only heard good things about you guys, so that's why I've been, since day one, very excited about this project. It's our duty to kind of steward that money, so that's why I'm really asking a lot of these questions. So kind of just going back to that permanent debt, again, I know interest rates change, et cetera. That's really the only number that went down was the permanent debt, and it went down by 500, which is a significant portion of what you're asking us for. So is that actually as high as that can go, or is there some wiggle room there, or?
Yeah, no, that is, I mean, just as Bruce said, so the entire funder, collection of funders, which you would be part of, would have access to our projected operating budgets and everything else. So the issue there is the state is kind of, you get the benefit of the state's eyes on this as well, which is if they can see that your operating budget can absorb more debt, they're going to want us to put more debt on. So this is pushing the envelope because as it is, you know, we are required to trend our assumptions of 2% increases in income and 3% increases in expenses. And as everybody knows, that means that the road is going to cross where you're going to run out of income and your expenses are going to start to outstrip that. So this is where you know, based on the numbers, I would also say that in the initial budget, the projected rents for some of the affordable units is higher than what we have realized subsequently is going to be something that we can actually attract somebody. So even if some of the units, and there's a mix of units at different income levels, but the units that are, say, at 80% AMI can't really pay an 80% rent. You know, they're not going to be in a subsidized monthly voucher scenario, but they also can't stably house themselves at that 80% rent. So that is also why some of that adjustment came down.
All right, awesome. Thank you very much.
Yep.
That's it, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Wellman?
Thank you. Thank you for coming back before us with your plans. I have some similar questions. Thank you for your explanation on the permit cut. That was complete, and I appreciate that. I wanted you to break out for us your number of units at the different income levels, so different AMI levels, if you could.
Okay.
And I'd like to know what your funding mechanism is for your residents. So would it be a buy-in to a co-op? Would it be, and what do you anticipate those rents might be at that point for those different units? Sure.
I wish I had I could probably pull up my laptop, but there are going to be 8 vouchers provided by the veterans, so they're called a VASH voucher. So they would be a project-based, meaning that the property would always have those rent subsidy vouchers attached to the property. And that then means that for 8 of the units, the veteran would only be paying 30% of their income. And that basically also means that it gets down to very low-income individuals. 30% AMI would be the range there.
Yep.
The other units are targeted at 80% or less. And now that is, 80% is the threshold for when something becomes affordable. And what we have within the 80% and under category, we will have some individuals who will be able to pay close to that, but we'll have other individuals who won't be, but will be maybe over income per se for those VASH vouchers. And what we have found, especially once the wraparound services and once somebody gets their life a little more stabilized and realizes that they can either, tap into better programs from either the VA or do some part-time work, that again helps stabilize the income, but it will never allow them to get over that.
Okay, so you're thinking 13 at the 80% or less range, and then
Yes.
8 at the 30%.
That's right. And I apologize that I didn't bring the operating numbers with me, but I can look that up before I leave the building.
How many units in this project will be for female veterans?
It is
let me
distinguished.
Jump in, right, it doesn't matter. It's all who's ever eligible.
Yeah.
It's non-distinguished.
Right.
What does
It's
that mean?
Yeah, co-ed. I mean, there is no preference one way or the other.
So I believe I understood that there was some conversation previously that there were separate entrances for women, or
No,
that some female veterans didn't.
Yeah, our model has evolved, I'll say evolved, maybe that's not the right word, but,
Sure.
our first couple of properties have really been male only, which really addressed the need of who was in our program at the time.
Sure.
We've since built a specific to female veterans, and the women that have chosen to live there, some of them, have suffered military sexual trauma and other such events. So we fill our women's building immediately, and it's very stable. In our property that we may have been referring to in New Jersey that we opened this with since our last meeting that I've been here, we have a wing that's separate, that the women have a separate entrance, a separate fob,
Yeah.
a separate laundry, and there's 8 out of 70 that meet that. But there are also women that live in the rest of the property that just live regularly, amongst them. So because of the size of this building and somewhat the limit of 21 units as opposed to, let's say, 70, we don't have that. We may have discussed that early on, but I think that's changed with our experience.
Okay, thank you for that. So you have referenced a couple of your other properties, Agawam, Chicopee, Northampton, Pittsfield, and that's the one that has the 2
Yep.
structures. Can you tell me how much the communities contributed? What do the municipalities contribute to those projects?
Well, if you asked me before I came, I could have told you.
Right.
I know Pittsfield donated to that property, I think it was $200,000. That was in 2009, so whatever that number is today. I think Agawam, we actually had $500,000 that was committed, that we actually came in under budget and didn't use all of the money. That's what occurred, and I can
Right.
kind of get the details of that, but that's what happened in Agawam. Chicopee was a tax credit deal that didn't require any
Right.
money from the town. Northampton, Leeds, on the VA campus,
Yeah.
It was the VA that.
the VA funded it in a program that no longer exists, they paid for, I think, roughly 70–80% of the property, so we didn't have a need from the town. And in New Jersey, it was a tax credit project that never had any need. So we don't have any debt, we don't have any need, because of the low-income housing tax credits, we're able to fund it, which
Right.
Peter can answer why that works in some better than others, but it
That's
didn't
right.
work in this.
It's a good question. It is very hard to compare kind of the apples to apples, if you will, especially around how what they call the capital stack works in different deals. This being a smaller, really the smallest, with the exception of the women's specific building in Pittsfield, it doesn't have the same reach for the low-income housing tax credit. The other really big thing that we do whenever we can, if it makes sense, is we do a repurpose of historic buildings. And between the low-income housing tax credit and the historic tax credit, it brings significant capital to make the project work without the need. We also work in a lot of communities that just don't have anything like a trust, an affordable housing trust fund. They don't have anywhere near the same kind of constraints or needs and such like that. And in this case, it's a small site with 21 units is as much as you can do there, and it's even more, as I think people had mentioned, than it was originally envisioned, because to make essentially the economics work. Yeah.
Did you look at any transit-oriented development funds? as part of the
Yeah,
mix
so
with state?
the way we work it with the state is the state has all these different pots of money, and we basically say, this is the number we need. Whatever pot of money you can fund us with, we can take. Now, with that said, we also have to qualify. So we qualify in this particular round. The reason why we were awarded when we were, it was the supportive housing round, where the state had determined that the National Housing Trust Fund was going to be used for this kind of permanent supportive housing, and we applied in that round for that. The development may or may not qualify for the transit-oriented development, depending on the location of the bus line, but again,
Right there.
okay, there you go. So, we put it in the application, and our relationship essentially as experienced, successful developers with the state, that'll come here in the next month or two as far as they decide this is where we have money from this fund that works, we'll go there.
I thank you. You answered all of my questions completely. I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else?
Yeah, just really quick. We did ask you to do some homework, and you absolutely did some homework. I'm all for this. For the residents, it might seem like a very big number, but listen, this is what the budget is for. So I think it's a worthy cause, and I think we can all reference inflation between gas, chicken, and Chinese food. I think every single person in this room and every resident feels the pinch. So, we did anticipate the cost going up. Mr. Montori, through you, the chair, through Mr. Montori, as far as the veteran services, I know we fund a lot, then we get it back. The state reimburses on a yearly basis. What's going to be the impact to us locally? Any idea, meaning, let's say this goes through, any idea what the veteran services budget would increase locally? And maybe you have an example of other sites where, let's say it's Pepperell or wherever it is, Andover, all of a sudden the veteran services budget goes from $1 million to $2 million. Any idea there, Mr. Montori?
It's hard to predict. I mean, we're talking 21 additional veterans in town. They could all ask for services through our veteran services officer. Most likely they will, and we'll need to provide them. But it's hard to determine if that's the case. I mean, there may be services they're already going to get through Soldier On that they won't need from us. So I wouldn't say there's not going to be any impact. It's just tough to determine. Okay. Luckily, over the last few years, our budget's been stable. If not, we've spent less than we've needed in the budget, but we've kept it the same in anticipation of some impacts from
All right.
Soldier On.
All right, wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you for all the work. Thank you.
I'm just going to, yes, I just got simple, I mean, we've gone through all the numbers. But I heard you say at the beginning of the conversation, you went to the state, and the state is telling you to go try to find every resource you can. I'm here from the town, so I want to say the same thing. Have you used every number that you're able to do before asking the money from the town? So have you gone through everything of asking every funding source, everything prior to asking for the $600,000 from us?
We have, and we still have this pending amount, and we have committed soldier-on fee and overhead, as well as foundation money to raise. So there is already that kind of beyond comfort level commitment of what we can do, and that's kind of where we're at, yeah.
Short and sweet, thank you.
All right, I just have a couple of questions, and then I'll offer a comment. There's a developer's fee in here of about $417,000. So who technically is the developer? Is that the builder firm, or is that Soldier On?
No, that's Soldier On. So the developer fee and overhead covers basically me, Bruce, all the case managers, things like that, that goes into the deal.
I just want to clarify that. And then I know this obviously is a large ask, right? You mentioned in your comments with the 350 already committed, adding another 600 gets us to 950. But for the record, I think we've already put another 40,000 or 40 plus thousand into this.
Yeah,
property.
I think we gave Tewksbury Home Build at least, I think it was 40,000, 30?
30. Thank you for clarifying. So we're closing in quickly on $1 million commitment, and I just think the residents should be aware of that. Which brings me to two other questions. I believe these have been asked before, but I'm going to ask them again. Any commitment is there any commitment that can be made to benefit Tewksbury veterans specifically? Like, can they get to the head of the line? Can there be a proportion of the 21 units that's dedicated to Tewksbury veterans? We're going to put $1 million of Tewksbury resident money on the table, potentially.
Right.
So that's a reasonable ask, in my opinion.
Yeah. So when it comes to the tenant selection plan, which is something that governs just what you're talking about, there can be a local preference. It just has to be a documented needed preference, right? So that then it kind of puts it back on the town, which I can work with the powers that be that are working on that kind of wait list to make sure that, if there can't be a documented thing and it doesn't happen, it's kind of outside of my control to kind of get that local preference. However, key to all of this is when we work with a town like this, and we've already been working closely with the housing authority and the veterans agent, our goal is, just even to the point of this state money, is that it's Tewksbury residents who are going to be first at the table.
Yeah. So is there anything that you can commit formally to that?
Can we commit? I mean, I think we can commit to doing everything to create the local preference, as in which we would do anyways.
Yeah, that's right.
As well as, I think the process in the awareness of the project and the dates, we can certainly make sure it's first and foremost in the Tewksbury residents' world, and really do some aggressive outreach. I can commit to saying, we'll go to the, whether it's at the town hall or at a school, or, we can do some outreach sessions within the community. So veterans are aware of it, the town's aware of it ahead of time, because I think to what Peter said, what we see in our other properties is a lot of veterans come through Soldier On in Western Mass because we have a large transitional program. We don't have that out here. So it would really be looking locally for the veterans. And it often fits the need beyond the veteran. We have a lot of children of veterans that contact us and say, my father's getting older, he's living alone, we're worried about him, and, this is kind of assisted living that's very affordable, that, they get a lot of services that rent generally wouldn't cover. If you went to one of the assisted living, and God knows what that is, I know it's a lot of money a month, and you get the same type of a supported environment. So I think it would really catch the Tewksbury residents' awareness if we were able to make sure everybody's aware and get it out there and educate that this is the process, this is the timeline, this is how the list works, and let's get you on it sooner than later.
So what I'd like to ask you to do, I don't know how this vote will transpire, but assuming it goes forward, what I'd like to ask you to do is sketch out your marketing plan.
Yeah.
I'd like to know that Tewksbury residents are going to be educated. If we put this kind of investment into this project with you, quite frankly, I don't want to talk to residents who ask, where did that $1 million go? And there's no Tewksbury people benefiting. So we have to make that a reality. So at a minimum, I'd like to know how you approach that. You just gave a good example of, beefing up your marketing and education efforts. I know the veterans agent here in town would absolutely facilitate that and help with that. But I want to make sure that we have a document that we can look at, right? That
Absolutely.
There's an accountability to that, right?
Right.
Where you're making a commitment to that, and I want to be able to hold that up and show my residents in town that that's
And I think
a
we'd
commitment.
be happy to
Yeah.
provide our version of how we
Yep.
approach it, and then get
Yep.
your input, or your VSO's input.
I think that's critical to this.
We're not looking to have this rigid plan, so I'll help create one with you.
Yep, I appreciate
we'll all
that.
be on the
You know
same
what I'm
page.
looking for. It's a goal, right? It needs to be high level with respect to making sure that Tewksbury veterans are benefiting from this in some way, right? So that brings me to the second question that's somewhat related, and that goes to, you mentioned briefly maybe a transportation employee. How many people would be employed in this 21-unit facility? And can there be a commitment to hire Tewksbury people to staff a Tewksbury-based project?
Yeah, I think, the staff, there wouldn't be a ton of full-time staff that's committed specifically to this one property, but we've actually been hiring staff in Eastern Mass. We had a woman who worked for us for a while, and then her and her fiance moved. She was from Tewksbury. That's just a coincidence.
Yep.
But we're looking more in Eastern Massachusetts, as we grow and have some other opportunities out here. And then I think the drivers, I'd love to have Tewksbury, whether they live there or, most of the drivers, out of, I think, 17 drivers we have in our other programs, 15 are veterans that live with us. 2 are a couple of local retired veterans that happen to want to drive part-time, and they drive for us. And, we wouldn't have those numbers to start with, but I'd just soon have everybody from Tewksbury.
I'd urge you to work to find that reality. We have other parties that come in here on unrelated matters. They're opening businesses, beer and wine stores, and almost to a person. They'll come in here and sit in the chairs you're in, and they'll make that commitment that we're going to, first and foremost, try to hire local people, right?
We need drivers in Brighton right now. I'll hire Tewksbury people tonight.
There you go.
They'll be driving
Good for you.
tomorrow.
Good for
So
you.
I can,
Yeah.
that's
Yep.
almost, it's a reverse.
Yep.
Give me some drivers from Tewksbury and we'll take them.
Yep. At the end of the day, again, this is going to be significantly funded potentially by Tewksbury. So we need a Tewksbury benefit beyond the obvious. And I don't know that you were here. I'm just going to be very brief, but the colleague to my left is a veteran himself. One of the most influential people in my life was my father-in-law, who was blinded on D-Day at age 19 in service to our country. He lived in my home with my family for 25 years. So there is no question, in my opinion, about the value of supporting veterans and what we do for them. But that having been said, I have a lot of heartburn around the finances that you're asking Tewksbury to put on the table. I'm going to defer to my colleagues and follow their wisdom on this, but I think it's a tall ask, and I know Peter knows the last time you were here, we had a discussion, and the ask that I made was sharpen the pencil, less than 500,000. And we're going the wrong direction. I understand a lot of things have influenced that, but it doesn't make it any easier on this side of the table. This is a big ask. And I've been sitting here for a long time, and there aren't very many where I really struggle to make a decision. So I'm going to see what my colleagues want to do, and I'll follow their lead. But I'm going to be vigilant to the benefits to Tewksbury people, regardless of what happens here, because I want to make sure that there's a local benefit. And I would appreciate every effort you can make to make that a reality.
I can commit to that. We'll do everything. I would just soon pick 12 or 21 Tewksbury residents myself. And if the process would allow it, we would definitely do it. We operate in towns. Tinton Falls, New Jersey, we're part of the town. And we're very much, now there are people from outside of Tinton Falls, but we have a lot of Tinton Falls residents that live in there that have wanted to go there. So it's basically kind of what we do, town by town, as we do this.
Well, I'm counting on it, because we're on the same page in that regard.
Mr.
Kelly.
Mr. Chairman, this is music to my ears. We did ask the question. I know we asked the question, and I thought the feedback was because of state and federal funds, it's rather difficult to say, okay, we can bring in Tewksbury veterans. I think the exact quote, a veteran is a veteran, and I get it, right? A veteran is a veteran. But thank you, Mr. Johnson, for bringing it up. But it seems like, now the pendulum has shifted, hopefully in our favor. Does anything change?
Really, just as Bruce said, we definitely can commit. The state's local preference does have a limit because, right? So that's, in that sense, I don't want to be misquoted or have the thing wrong, but there's a preference for local, and it just has to be exhibited, and that's what we will work to do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for driving that point home.
It may take some teamwork to get there, but I'd like to think we can make that happen.
I think we just want to make clear, we'll do everything in our power.
Right.
Yep.
There's laws and rules that come with the rest of this money that we'll follow, but I think we can do the local preference. I think, truthfully, the outreach, the communication, we're not going to be doing the outreach in Lowell. Right. We'll be doing the outreach in Tewksbury. Yeah. And I believe, and I can't promise this, but I can believe that any veteran in Tewksbury that wants to move into this property, if they react early enough and quick enough, will get in. I can't guarantee that that's what's going to happen, but that's what we see in every community. It's the same thing that we see in all of the communities, that local individuals that want to get in. But I think the key is the process and making sure we don't violate any rules, right, and stick to the rules that give us all this money to build the housing. And then, but I'd love to be down. I'll come down every other week if you want, or have somebody down here, and we'll do whatever you want us to do, because...
I think you understand the ask. It's loud.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. No, and that's right. What Bruce is referring to is the required affirmative fair housing and marketing plan. So we will have the document like that, that truly does both. There is an affirmative, where we are kind of obligated to target those folks who aren't being served right now, first and foremost, and them being Tewksbury residents as part of that local preference.
Okay. Thank you. All right, so there's an ask in front of the board this evening. Everyone knows what it is, so I'll ask at this point if there are any motions.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the $600,000 from the Tewksbury Affordable House Trust Fund, with the stipulation that Soldier On work with the community to find a local preference for Tewksbury residents.
Second.
All right, we have a motion made
Discussion.
and a second.
Can we have any discussion around this number?
I'm sorry?
Can there be discussion around this number? With a motion on the table.
I would say we have a motion and a second. We should take action on that.
Okay.
So we have a motion made and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Opposed?
And I'm going to vote in opposition to give my colleague an opportunity to discuss.
Thank you. I support the idea of increasing the apportionment of our funding to this project, but not to that level. The level that is requested would be approximately 20% of our affordable housing trust, which I'm not comfortable with. I would support something in the 11 or 12% range, which would be something like a total ask of, I'm doing math, $530,000 to $600,000 in total. That's in addition to the, that's including the $350,000 that we've already committed. So I would be amenable to something like an additional $250,000 to $300,000 for discussion with my colleagues.
Yeah, second for discussion.
It wasn't a motion, it was
Oh,
just.
I'm sorry, I thought that was, fair enough. I also concur with increasing the amount. I was actually had a number of 150 in mind, bringing it to an even $500,000, which is more than half of the ask. And with the comments earlier about how many funding opportunities there are, and I do want to give them credit for exploring those, it sounds like there's a bit of a back and forth between the state. So I would like to see us increase our commitment with the hopes that the state and those other avenues are going to take that goodwill and increase their funding sources as well.
Any further discussion? Okay, any motions?
Mr. Chairman, I'd make a motion to increase our commitment $150,000, bringing the total committed to $500,000.
Okay, is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion made and a second to increase the commitment by $150,000 to a total of $500,000.
That's correct.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Opposed.
And I'm going to vote in the affirmative. That would be 3-2 in favor. Okay. I think what the message is keep working at it and keep us apprised, and we'll talk some more. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for everything you do. Thank you.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
I do have one follow-up question as far as for when we do go back to the state, am I taking the 500 as the town's commitment at this point? Okay, just want to make sure.
Yes, for sure. Thank you,
Thank you
gentlemen.
very
Thank you.
much.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, all right, we're running a little behind our 6:30 item now. So, housing production plan.
Turns that on, Jason.
I think it'll go on.
There you go. Is that it's the same as the handout?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So I can look this way.
Yes. So,
All right, just to set the table, we We have on the agenda tonight a discussion around the town's formal housing production plan for 2022. Assistant Town Manager Sadwick is going to present this to us, and I don't know if you can introduce our
I would do
guest.
that. I have with me Chris Hayes, who's with the Northern Middlesex Council of Governments, NIMCOG. They are working on our housing production plan as part of a district local technical assistance grant. This is probably the third time that they've done this for us. The original plan that we did was in 2006, and that was done by town staff. And then we brought in NIMCOG in 2016 and in 2017. And then the 2017 plan expired last month. So the purpose behind having these production plans is that in the 40B world, it allows for us to have a potential safe harbor that we can achieve if we hit production goals. So NIMCOG is very good at demographics and number crunching and helping putting the plan together. So all of those requirements from the state are done by our regional planning agency, and then there's pieces that the town has to do, which is identify potential housing sites, which Chris will kind of address as he walks through this. So
Okay.
I will let Chris take us through the slides.
Thank you so much, Steve. So Chris Hayes, Economic Development and Housing Planner for NIMCOG. Very pleased and excited to work with Tewksbury on housing production plan. I've been with NIMCOG only since October, but really diving in. And the purpose of this is more to kind of introduce and kick off the housing production plan. You know, Steve already kind of talked about the purpose and the goals, but we've done just a little bit of background research so far and kind of want to introduce this to the select board and to the public at large and kind of explain what we'll be doing over the next 4 months. Next slide. So we're kind of starting off, though, with why plan for housing. And notwithstanding the regulatory functions that Steve mentioned, as you probably know, and I think you know, a lot of agenda items on tonight's meeting address is that our region, our state, but our region has an affordable housing crisis. So Tewksbury is very close to the region in terms of having roughly 30% of its households pay more than 30% of their income on housing, and about 14% that pay more than half their income on their housing costs. And that's both a real humanitarian issue in terms of those families not having discretionary money to do anything but pay for housing, but also an economic development issue as the region and the town's employers are increasingly having trouble finding people that can live nearby and afford to live nearby. So what the housing production plan really is an opportunity for the community to come together with a proactive vision of how to meet those housing needs. And not only does it serve the regulatory functions in 40B and also give town preference in one-stop funding applications, it also can be a framework for discussing comprehensive permit projects, affordable housing trust fund expenditures, and any other actions, zoning actions, things like that the town can undertake to increase the supply of affordable housing. Next slide. Just as a refresher, in case nobody knows, what do we mean by affordable housing? While HUD has a lot of different income thresholds, a very common one, as you may know, that also the state uses is 80% of area median income. The area we're talking about is Greater Lowell, which includes Lowell, its surrounding communities, and Pepperell, Groton, Westford as well, and Dunstable. And of course Tewksbury and the adjacent communities. So that amount was $126,500 was the area median income in 2022. HUD's adjusted AMI for a family of 3 that would be eligible for tier of affordable housing is $80,500 a year, which you know, if I wasn't a 2-income household, I'd qualify under. So that's a pretty significant thing right there. Another important number to note is the fair market rent, which is the 40th percentile gross rent for a standard quality unit in this region, and that is at $1,773. So that's kind of the median rent in the area, a little bit less than median. And the big important thing there is it's jumped by 15% in the last year. That's an abnormally large jump on usually it's like 3 or 4%. So it's a really big jump. And that's been a trend for the last couple of years. Next slide. Talking about 80% AMI and subsidized housing inventory, just as, again, a refresher for anybody who might not know, including members of the public, the subsidized housing inventory is a list of affordable housing the state keeps. And to be added to that subsidized housing inventory, units have to be affordable to 80% of AMI and have some reporting requirements and subsidized by an approved agency or monitored by a town or the housing authority. Important to note, the SHI isn't the end-all or be-all when we're thinking about affordable housing, because it doesn't include units that are naturally affordable, market rate units that are just inexpensive. It doesn't include units that are income restricted, but at, let's say, 100% AMI, like workforce housing, or units that have slipped through the cracks or otherwise the developer isn't meeting reporting requirements. I think that's it for the next slide. So where's Tewksbury on the SHI? As you might know, and that 2016 dip is an aberration. I think it was a reporting error. But in general, you passed 10%, which is the goal the state sets last year. That's the good news. The bad news, as you may know, the goal is going to move up to from where it is right now at 1,080 to between 1,174 and 1,214. That's because the 2020 decennial census recorded a higher number of year-round housing units. We don't know how many of those are year-round and how many are seasonal, but once the Census Bureau provides that information, that goal will be updated to the new higher lines on the graph there. So then you'll be between 100 and 200 units below the goal. Next slide. And maybe even more importantly, you can see this is a graph of the dark blue line on top is Tewksbury's housing median home sales price. The gray line is Massachusetts median home sales price. And you can see in 2013, 2014, recovering from the Great Recession, there was an increase, a gap, and Tewksbury became more expensive than the state in general, and it's remained that way ever since. And then you can see those real increases in the last 2 years during the COVID years, and we know that income has increased, but not by that much. Okay, next slide. Looking at who's burdened, and when we say burdened, a moderately burdened means about spending 30% or more on housing. Severely burdened is spending 50% or more of income on housing. And you can see, as we talked about in the first slide, that one to the right total is showing the 13% that's severely burdened and 16% that is moderately burdened. But then the rest of those bars are broken out by income category. And you can see on the left of the chart where it's the lowest income category below 30% AMI. That is where the biggest need is. 70% of people at that income category, of households at that income category in Tewksbury are severely burdened. And you can see that there's also needs across the spectrum. Even in the folks who make more than area median income, about 10% are burdened. Next slide. But what kind of types of families and households are those? Well, honestly, all types. If you were to pick a burdened family at random, it would most likely be a small family, but that's between 2 and 4 people in a family, but that's also because that's just the most common household type in Tewksbury. Disproportionately elderly non-family, those are elders living alone or elders living with somebody unrelated. Those are most disproportionately hit by housing burden, but by the numbers, just raw numbers, there is more small families hit by that. And good news, bad news, I guess mostly bad news for housing affordability, those are the two groups that are growing in Tewksbury from what we can tell is elder non-families as folks retire, as they, lose their spouse or whatnot and become living alone, or new families where we see a real big cohort at around 20 to 30 years old that perhaps are still living with their parents, perhaps are just now starting their families, and that's going to be a housing need moving forward is what we think. Okay, next slide.
Can I ask a question?
Oh,
In that small small family category?
Yes.
How many of those are single parents? Do you have that information?
That's not broken out by, we know how many small families are single parents. We don't know how many, at that point, it's cutting the pie too small to know how many are burdened at what level, but we do have some of that information in terms of just how many are single parents versus how many total are two-parent households.
I receive a lot of calls from single parents looking for help finding housing in our region, so that's why I asked the question.
I'm not surprised, and we might be able to dig in and find some cross-tabulations that provide more of that type of data to see how, but I suspect regardless it's a need, and we can say that with a lot of certainty.
Thank you.
Looking at the housing production plan itself, and these are really we've got three major chapters that DHCD requires. The first one is a comprehensive needs assessment, and the way that we're proposing to do it is to do demographic analysis, income analysis, talking about basically the data, only digging deeper, that we just talked about. Also looking at the existing housing and also the housing conditions. That's things that might not come up in census data, but whether that is housing that is substandard or has other deficiencies. And seeing where the gap is, where we're projecting population would be going, where we're projecting how much housing would be developed, and what that gap would be. And then we list all of the affordable housing efforts and resources that the town could call upon to reduce that gap, and also the development constraints and limitations, including infrastructure, water, sewer, that type of thing that makes it more difficult, and what could be mitigated and what can't be mitigated. Next slide. The DHCD also requires a numerical goal, and that goal has to be at least 0.5%, 0.5%. I guess that's 0.05, but it means, 0.5% of your total housing each year should be the subsidized housing goal, or more if the town so chooses. But we also want to add in a set of broad goals and vision for housing based on the comprehensive needs assessment, but also based on public input, select board input, staff input, etc. Next slide. And then finally, implementation strategies. As Steve was talking about, there are very specific items that must be in there in terms of both specific actions the town can take, the desired characteristics of affordable housing, a list of parcels, both private and public, that would be appropriate for affordable housing, and any potential zoning changes. I know the town did a rezoning, this is from the last HPP, so it doesn't reflect that, but any other analysis to see if there's any other ways zoning can be changed to support development of housing. And finally, one thing that we really want to push is talking about regional collaboration and really tackling the regional housing crisis together with all the communities. Next slide. So what does that mean for next steps? In the next, hopefully 4 months, ideally 4 months, but we'll see. First of all, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be completing that comprehensive needs assessment. That's crunching the data. That's the census numbers. Then we want to do some public outreach, hand in hand with Steve and Alex, talking about maybe a public meeting, maybe a farmer's market pop-up, to see if we got that needs assessment right, to share the results, most importantly, to see if we got it right, see if we're missing anything, and really begin to talk about the goals and strategies and vision, bigger vision for the town. Is it the same as it was 5 years ago, or has it changed? Has the needs changed? Then we'll work on the next couple of months of completing those other chapters that have the goals and the strategies with the town. And then finally, hopefully by December, we will have a planning board vote and then a select board vote, which is required before the plan is set set for approval. But really, we encourage select board members and the public to participate in each step, not just at the end. Yeah, that's it. That's. I'm really looking forward to working with everybody. That's my contact info, and I'm also happy to entertain questions.
Let me turn to my colleagues. Are there any questions up here?
Yeah,
Ms. Wellman?
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really quickly, does the plan come back with, I know you mentioned parcels and so forth, does it come back with policy recommendations as well? Yeah, potential zoning changes. Dwelling, I'm interested in like accessory dwelling units is, changing some of our policy in town around that, things like that. To
Yeah, that-
incentivize folks to build that, and I don't know what other towns are doing that kind of work too, so I would be interested in seeing that kind of information.
Yeah, and it's one of the things we're best at is providing case studies from other towns and what strategies have been successful or not, and that is one thing that we would like to include in the housing production plan.
I thank you for this complete work, and I look forward to working with you on and attending all of your events. So I appreciate that and that invitation. I look forward to that coming. Thank you. Thank you,
Mr. Cretton. Do you have any questions?
I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Mackey? Okay. Thank you. Okay. I just have a couple of questions. I'll be brief. You referenced, Mr. Hayes, that the potential 2020 census, so 1174 to 1214. Are we getting closer, Mr. Sadwick, to having a final number? Is that?
No.
Where is this number coming from? Is it a guesstimate, or is
Well,
it
no, I'll
based
answer
on the
this.
census?
Okay.
Real quickly, what happens is, because we talked about this at staff meeting today, is that when the census is done, they come out with a total household count. And so we know what the total number is. What we're waiting for is for them to drill down and tell us what the seasonal housing count is, because that's subtracted in order to come up with this 40B number that we're looking at. So what happened in the 2010 census was that we had about 45 seasonal homes that had to be subtracted out. And I'm expecting it's going to be less this time, because I know of seasonal homes and cottages in town that have been converted into year-round homes.
Okay. So that number is in
I would assume it's going to be at the higher end of the range that Chris gave.
Okay. All right. And the minimum plan requirement is 0.5% growth annually? Did I get that right?
Yeah, so that SHI adding 0.5% of your total housing units. So I don't remember what the number is, but as SHI units a year.
About 55 units, if I'm thinking right.
Yeah. And that when the 2020 number comes out, it'll be edited to be 0.5% of the 2020 number, yes.
Okay.
And that comes into play with Safe Harbor. If you add that many units in a single calendar year and have a current housing production plan, then you're able to basically be safe from 40Bs. The Housing Appeals Committee can...
For 1 year.
For 1 year, yeah.
Okay. All right. So that gets me to my ask, right? When we're building this out, and I don't want to spill beans, I'm going to mention this later on, but this board met a week ago and set some important goals that we want to achieve. And one of those involved this topic of affordable housing and the commitment to meet or exceed the numbers that we're required to get to. So I'd like to ask if we can build in like some benchmarks, right? There's a minimum, but if we want to achieve greater than that to secure the town for a longer term, what are reasonable benchmarks against the number that we have to be measured against?
Correct.
Right?
We can do that.
Yeah.
And as Ms. Wellman had asked, the bit about policy changes and stuff,
Right.
there's things that if we do some policy changes over the course of 5 years, we're going to increase the affordable production. Like, keeps mentioning about accessory dwelling units, and that's something that
Yeah.
is a very quick way of adding affordable units. They become a little bit more challenging when it comes to getting them on the inventory, but they are real affordable units. You know, we're going to hit a point at some time where it's going to be, yes, we're building affordable housing, but because we're doing it the way we want to do it and meet the needs of our community, they may not count on the inventory. So, you know, there's the real units, and then there's the units that hit what the state's looking for.
Yeah.
And,
So, go ahead.
just to add to that, a housing production plan can really deal with both of those things. It can deal with lowering the market rate units and making market rate units more affordable, and adding units to the subsidized housing inventory.
Yeah. So I'll end with this comment. Mr. Sadwick participated in that discussion, so you know the essence of what this board was striving to accomplish. And I think this is an opportunity to embed that philosophy, if you will, into this document. And you gave some good examples that we can strive to be better than maybe we have in the past, and maybe lever some resources that we haven't been able to before. So I just would ask you to consider that in the equation, because we have an opportunity in the timing to make this a part of what the board was striving to accomplish in the next 12 months or so. So we're not going to get the units, I want to stress, but we want to have a good plan to work off of.
Right, your goal last week was affordable housing, and we're putting this in front of you to help you achieve that goal, so it just kind of worked out that way.
It's very coincidental, but much appreciated. So, so we'll look forward to participating. I know one of the slides welcomed this board's involvement, and we absolutely welcome further discussion on this topic. So, thank you both.
Yep.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we're going to move to a discussion around the proposed Department of Public Works and school maintenance facility. Good evening. How you doing tonight? All right? All right. Thanks for your patience. Well, I said thank you for your patience while we work through some other items. If you can just make sure you introduce our guests, I'd appreciate it. Or they can introduce themselves.
Sure. My name is Jeff Alberti with Weston and Sampson.
Jeff.
And I am Tony Westpizer with Weston and Sampson.
Tony, thank you. Welcome.
And the town's engineer is in the audience, Kevin Hardeman, who's also part of the design team. Dave Libby and John Marchand are not here this evening, but believe me, the schools have been part of this through and through.
Excellent.
As you know, we've continued our effort to bring a project to town meeting this fall for the construction and renovation of a combined school and DPW facility. We wanted to present tonight a status of that design, where we are, and to provide you an opportunity for questions. So I'm going to turn it over to the presentation. Jeff.
Great. Thank you very much. I did want to start off, as we've done in the past, with just a quick update on Public Works and school maintenance responsibilities. I've narrowed this down. Originally, we had many slides on this, but I always like to start it off for those that might be watching for the first time as a reminder of what these departments do for the community and why we're moving forward in recommending a building. And I wanted to start with the DPW, and I could spend the whole presentation talking about what they do for the community, but I just wanted to really focus in on the first line, which says that the DPW touches the lives of the residents every day by maintaining the infrastructure that the community relies on. And that includes everything from repair and maintenance of 160 miles of roadway, 36 miles of sidewalks. They maintain the stormwater system, which includes 3,300 catch basins and manholes across the community. There's 180 miles of water mains, 158 miles of gravity sewers, plus force mains and pump stations. They maintain approximately 155 pieces of equipment. All of that equipment is used to maintain this infrastructure, from DPW equipment to police and other department vehicles. They have the engineering services that support capital improvement projects, townwide permitting, and oversight of private development. And importantly, they're on call 24 hours a day to handle emergencies and incidents across the community, from some of the obvious like snow and ice removal operations. So if you just look at this list and extract some of these services that are maintained, and it really rings true that they do touch the lives of the residents every day by maintaining that infrastructure. Somewhat out of sight, out of mind most of the time. Also very importantly is the school maintenance responsibilities, the school maintenance department. They maintain 8 buildings, and while that may not seem like a large number, it's over 1 million square feet of space. Pretty significant when you put that together. They're responsible for approximately 165 acres of the grounds associated with them, as well as the preventive maintenance for these facilities. And that's everything from carpentry, landscaping, plumbing, HVAC, electric. So again, a very significant responsibility for the community. And then moving to why does the town need a new facility? I know that you've seen slides in the past. Just wanted to summarize some of our observations over the past year or two. The existing facilities, they range from 40 to 60 years old. They've really had no significant improvements. Maybe a coat of paint is probably some of the most significant. And as a result, they're undersized. They don't support the operation. And as you can see on the right, a large portion of the multi-million-dollar fleet that I talked about earlier that's used to maintain the community and the infrastructure, that equipment is left outdoors. That results in shorter equipment life, increased maintenance costs, and significant non-productive labor just trying to get that equipment out to respond to the needs of the community. The existing buildings don't comply with today's building codes, from sprinkler systems to ADA accessibility to fire separation. The toilet facilities don't meet plumbing code, and the locker and shower facilities just do not exist. In fact, that photo on the right, bottom right, shows the locker room that's actually out in the vehicle storage area. I guess I wouldn't call it a locker room, I'd just call it a corner for them to locate those lockers. The buildings do not meet the current mechanical code, and there are significant operational inefficiencies due to the space constraints. And the school maintenance operation is currently without a permanent facility to work from. So this is some of the basis that we use to begin the process of programming and coming up with the concepts and ultimate plan that's going to be presented to you this evening. So I wanted to start with just a kind of a brief history on what's been proposed for this facility, beginning with the existing conditions. This is a view of the existing site. You can see Pine Street across the bottom of your screen, Whipple's running up and down on the right, and the site is in the center of the screen with the RECC that was recently constructed in the upper right. The main portion of this site includes the existing, called the wing-shaped building. This is the main DPW facility. And along with that are some support structures, site amenities, salt storage structures that exist within the yard. And then there's the food pantry that's also on the existing site, which is an important aspect of this project. So the original proposed concept that we began the process in 2020, came up with an original concept in 2021. It really included removing that existing wing-shaped building and some of the structures on site and putting on some new structures, new construction, and those are shown in the yellow shading. And this is the overall plan that was originally developed in 2021. And as you can see by the red arrows, these represent new construction. As you know, new construction does come at a premium cost. We had originally developed a building, which is referred to as Building 1, for vehicle storage, including canopies and vehicle maintenance. Building 2 included shops, administration, offices, employee facilities, as well as some additional vehicle storage, as well as a new fuel island and a new salt shed. Through the process of developing this, we found prices began to increase, as everyone's well aware. We've seen over the last few years. When we presented this back in May of 2021, the price tag on this concept was at $37 million. We certainly heard the select board concerned about that price. We spoke at length with town manager, DPW, and we took advice and comments from the select board to really begin the process of seeing what we could come up with a reduced price concept that would still support the needs of the DPW and the school maintenance department. So to help us really understand the process for coming up with that concept, let me take those two pieces, building one that's shown in the left, and pull that aside because that's all new construction. And then building two, again, all new construction, and pull that aside. And let's look at what's being proposed today. And that's this concept here. And the main difference is that when you look at this proposed concept, there's really only one new building that's new construction versus the four elements that I showed you earlier. And the way that we developed that is we took the pieces of the initial program and we began taking them and coming up with adjacencies, such as a vehicle storage component, the vehicle maintenance component, as well as the employee facilities and shops. And we came up with an L-shaped operations center for those buildings. And what we had left was several components, and in lieu of taking those and building new, and based on suggestions from the town, from the select board, and town manager and DPW, we looked at repurposing the existing building, building two here, which is the wing-shaped building, and moving in a portion of the operations such as the wash bay into that existing building, and the remaining vehicle and equipment storage area. And what we focused on was to try to come up with a way to renovate that existing building without having to put a significant amount of improvements to it, because the more that you change an existing building, sometimes it can cost more to renovate. So by putting in the vehicle and equipment storage component, that doesn't require significant upgrades to some of the systems there. That was the best way to reuse that building and keep the costs down. And because of the location of building one, which is over the food pantry, we are proposing to renovate a portion of that building to support that food pantry operation. So kind of just looking at the different components, as I mentioned, now it's just one new building in a smaller footprint, and it consists of the stacked vehicle storage, vehicle maintenance, shops, and employee facilities and office space. And then as you move over to the right to the existing building, the primary use will be vehicle storage, shown represented by the primary gray areas, as well as a wash bay on the end, which will be a town wash bay that can be used by all town vehicles. So it was purposely located in a region where that you could get circulation in and out efficiently. And then the renovation of the food pantry. And then what we also did to control costs was reduce the extent of the site development. And that included reusing the existing salt shed, reusing the existing fueling facility, and limiting the amount of pavement that we were developing on the site. So to look at how that all fits into the costs, again, I wanted to give a brief history of that. When we began this process in 2020, it actually was right before the pandemic began. We were using 2019 pricing. We were escalating that out at 5%. We came up with initial cost at about $31 million. And as we know, right after we started this project, the pandemic began, and we began our roller coaster ride with pricing. Initially, because of concerns that we're going to be in an extended recession, we saw prices drop, which is represented by these blue lines, which are the average cost per square foot for DPW facilities. But soon after that, we saw a very significant spike, and we continue to see these higher costs. And this is really driven by supply chain and material shortages. So as a result of that spike, we saw that same facility that was originally priced out at $31 million in 2021 jump up to about $37 million, and that was the concept I presented earlier. So we took on that challenge of coming up with a concept that takes it from $37 million. We initially dropped it to about $29.5 million. We continued to identify options to further reduce the cost and ultimately got it down to a $28 million total project cost. Just showing you the high-level numbers on that. Again, in August 2020, here's the $31 million that was identified for the project prior to the pandemic spike. May 2021 is where it spiked to $37 million. That increase is associated with that supply chain and material shortage market condition. In March 2022, we got it down to 29.5, and that was primarily based on the adaptive reuse concept that was developed, keeping that existing building. And then again, took a little harder look at it and got it down to about $28 million, which is what is being presented to you this evening. So this total project cost was reduced by 25% at a time when prices are rising, and that was really through a lot of cost control measures and the adaptive reuse of that existing building. So from a schedule perspective, this is the overall schedule, and I'll just highlight some key points. This is where we are today with the current status of design and the schematic level and some existing conditions assessments. And the plan is to continue to advance that design, get a real good cost estimate in hand for town meeting and seek approval in October. And then from there, if approved, we'll move forward with finishing the design and getting out to bid and moving forward with an award in late winter, early spring period so that we can get a contractor as the ground is thawing, get them out there and move forward with construction, which is estimated at 21 months. It's a little bit longer for a construction schedule, and that's something that we've been adding to our contracts because of the material shortages, and that's a way to attract bidders. If they know they have a chance to order their material, let it get delivered, and then start construction, it allows for us to have a more competitive market. So in closing, I just want to talk a little bit about some benefits. There's certainly, I could spend a whole presentation just on the benefits of a facility of this type, both for DPW and the school maintenance department. But it starts really with the code-compliant, safe work environment for the town employees, which really does not exist today. It protects the town's multi-million-dollar investment in the vehicles and equipment that are used to maintain that infrastructure. And it's much more efficient workspaces, increases and improves response times, allows the departments to better serve the public. And it creates a consolidated public works and school maintenance campus, which will really improve the overall efficiency for those departments and also allows us, the town, the ability to better share some resources because they're in this campus together with a lot of similar equipment. And the reuse of the existing building, as I mentioned, that really will help reduce construction costs. It also gives us an opportunity, another benefit is to come up with some green, sustainable opportunities for these buildings. And I wanted to share with you some of the things that we typically will do on a facility of this type. And we're proposing to incorporate many of these into this facility for the new construction. They start with a photovoltaic-ready roof system. You can see some examples on 2 DPWs on the right. Those roofs were designed for the photovoltaic systems, and the towns went out after the fact with a power purchase agreement and added solar to those roof systems pretty efficiently, very low cost. There's also the ability for natural daylighting on these facilities, which reduces the use for artificial lights within these buildings. Where possible, we can look for some rainwater harvesting to collect and use that in wash bay situations, as well as super insulation of the building envelope. That's a really important one. We want to design this building so that we can exceed code from an energy efficiency perspective from 20 to 35%, which is what we've typically done in the past. There's also opportunities for high efficiency mechanical systems, heat pump systems, VRF systems. These are all systems that we've used in the past. Wherever we can, we're looking for heat recovery systems so that if we're generating heat within the space, and we have to exhaust it because of the operation, we want to capture that heat before it's exhausted and pump it back into the space. And then looking for an integral web-based building management system. It's really a system that will learn and optimize and come up with optimizing strategies for your building, so over time it's going to run more efficiently. So as opposed to just starting a start time and an end time, the start time, it'll learn when is the best time to start the system so that it's heated properly when staff arrives or cooled properly. So it's a really great system that will learn through AI to help come up with the best system for your building. And then just in closing, I thought it would be important to just answer the question that some ask is, what if this project does not move forward? Certainly, it doesn't mean that nothing has to be done because there are conditions out there that really should be addressed by the town. First and foremost, the town would still need to find a permanent home for the school maintenance department because they did lose their permanent home. And if this project were not to proceed, they would not have space for that. The town would definitely need to invest in some short-term improvements to the existing building. And these would be really Band-Aids. They may not be usable in the future, but they would need to be addressed from a code, safety, and operational perspective. Things such as building envelope repairs, roof replacement repairs. Some of them could be reused, but others could not. ADA improvements, sprinkler, site improvements. You can see the list in front of you here. So there are some significant improvements that if nothing is done with this project that the town would need to consider. And then finally, if you looked at that chart earlier, what's really important to note is that costs will continue to increase, but the DPW and school maintenance needs will remain. They will not go away if this project doesn't move forward. And so over time, the town will likely be in a position where you'll have to move forward with the project through more significant needs, such as a building is failing and so forth. And costs will continue to increase, which we've seen historically. Except for that one drop I had because of the pandemic. I hope that we never have another drop like that again. So one pandemic was enough. So with that, I appreciate the opportunity to present this update to you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from my colleagues? Let me open with one. You mentioned, solar panels on the roof and things of that nature. Do your cost estimates include that as a net against the 27 million, or is that construction cost and there might be some gain later?
So if the town were to try to do the solar panels themselves, that would be on top of the 28 million.
Okay.
One of the things that we are doing with another community right now is where it's easy enough for us to design it, so we're designing it in as a bid alternate to see how the price comes in, and if it's within the budget, we can award it. If not, the system, the roof is designed for it, and the town can just go out for a PPA and get it installed that way.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Wellman?
Thank you. Just building on that, have you talked with, or have you typically worked with like National Grid and DEP and EPA on programs that are energy efficient?
We do, yes. Typically, we'll go through and look at the building. Sometimes, for the most part, it's usually a prescriptive approach to come up with systems that will allow us to obtain rebates on the project, so that would be part of the process moving forward.
So if we were to appropriate funds toward this project and you continue on with the design work toward construction and, awarding out the bid, would we be able to get more hard numbers about what that design might look like and what those rebates might look like?
Yes, we will definitely be able to get rebate numbers through the design. We have to be further into it where we've actually selected the equipment. And then at the end, you wouldn't get the rebate till the end of construction.
Right.
But yes, we would be able to get that. It would be after town meeting, closer to the end of design, yes.
Right, I'm interested eventually. I think it would be great to get as close to net zero as possible on this building, because once we have it, it's great. We need it very much. And your presentation does a great job of demonstrating that need. But we also have to fund its operation in perpetuity. So being able to reduce our energy costs in an environment where energy costs are escalating is something that we need to be thoughtful about and bake into the design. And so I want us to be as aggressive as we can be within our budget.
Yes.
To make that happen. And I know that there's some building envelope pieces, and I'm really excited about the heat pump. I'd like to see batteries on those PV panels, because you can turn it into an operation that runs no matter what your power situation is. And
absolutely.
It's an emergency facility. So those are the things that I'm interested in addition to all the work that you've presented.
Yeah, what we can do is we have a group that's responsible for energy efficiency for all of our buildings. And so they'll put together a report and identify systems that can be included at no cost, essentially, that are built into our estimate. And then we'll identify systems that can be add on to that cost, and then identify payback periods. And so we can give the town this summary to allow us collectively to come up with the best systems for this building while balancing the cost, because obviously those two go together. But to your point, the first cost is one thing, but you got to run this building for 50 years. So the more that we invest in energy efficiency, the less it's going to cost you in the long run. And we can help with some of that modeling.
Are you doing modeling and work around EV fleets for DPWs, which isn't really happening right now?
Yeah.
But it will be.
Yeah, we're monitoring that very closely. We know that right now there's some significant challenges with the type of equipment that's needed, but we are keeping a very close eye on that and trying to build that infrastructure into our building so that if we have to provide EV charging within the building, that it's just pulling wires. So we put the infrastructure in wherever possible so that you're not tearing down walls to put in infrastructure at a later date.
Right. Thank you very much. I
Sure.
appreciate it.
Anyone else? Mr. Kelly?
Mr. Montori, maybe, is this the final product that would essentially go in front of the voters in October?
Essentially, it's close, yeah. We're just maybe with a few minor adjustments, but yes, it is.
And in your line of work, we just did an elementary school, we got significant funding at the state level. So in your line of work, do you just focus on design, or we keep on hearing potentially about federal assistance when it comes to infrastructure, DPW, water, sewer?
Right.
Do you tap into that, or is that kind of the town's responsibility through the state or through the feds?
So we actually have a group, because of all the ARPA funding and the IIJA funding, we have a group that's monitoring how that's being distributed. It's through, many of it's through local existing programs, and we're trying to determine if these facilities will qualify so that we can help towns apply for it. Right now, it's more like, it's if you're familiar with SRF funding, through the state revolving fund, it's more based on the infrastructure that's needed in the community, less the building itself. So pipes and distribution systems. But we are monitoring it very closely because there might be opportunities, and certainly if we find that there are, we'll help the town pursue those.
Now, and one final question. Obviously, you guys are designing this. Are you working with other towns, cities, and communities as we speak for like a like project, so to speak?
For a what?
Just like a similar project?
Yes, yeah, we're working with several at the moment.
Anyone tapping the brakes? Any town or city tapping the brakes in lieu of the economy?
No, it's funny. During COVID, everyone tapped the brakes, and we transitioned from.
We saw the graph and we understand why. That's hence the question.
Yeah, but more recently, we have had communities that were dormant for a while asking us to get it going. You know, there was talk at one point, hey, let's wait and see if prices are going to come back down. There's a likely chance that it's not, especially with all this funding that's getting pumped into the market, and contractors will start getting busier, could actually continue to grow. So we have several communities that have actually, town of Duxbury recently passed full funding for their DPW facility. We're in design on that, and we're working on several others to get funding.
Just curious, how much was that?
That was 28 million.
Same number.
Oh, yeah,
roughly.
actually was.
Same plans?
No, a little different.
All right.
I've been asked about the model projects. I know, a little different.
I got to ask the tough questions. All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Just one follow-up. You're opening bids next week for one?
Oh, yeah, in Rockport. We are opening bids on a 28,000 square foot facility. We just opened up file sub bids. They came in right on budget, which was encouraging. Of course, the budget was pumped up because we knew where the market was, and so we'll be opening up general bids next week, and that'll give us a good sense. We'll update our graph to see where prices are.
I was going to say, I don't want to be a smart aleck, but you'd be crazy not to put an asterisk against that number, but anyhow.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Mackey?
There was a slide you guys had with kind of the progression of pricing, and it had the adaptive reuse in red at the top. Can we go back to that slide real quick? Perfect. So my real question, don't have to answer in the room because I would like to see some data on it. But if we look at where we went from March to now, the building renovation costs, went down, but now the other costs went back up. So understanding we've been, I know I've seen multiple versions. I've had a lot of back and forth. So I know we've had to do multiple kind of reworks on the primary building. That renovation number makes a lot more sense now for the building. But my question is, it looks like we just kind of moved it.
Yeah.
So the goal, we were trying to drive that number down, and it looks like we just moved it from one column to the other.
Right.
So again, understand there were needs, building requirements that had to be moved from one to the other. But I would like to see, as a follow-on, kind of the breakdown of how we got to those numbers.
Sure.
What changes were made.
Yep, we'll be doing a detailed estimate, and that really, that key was driven by trying to save costs in renovation and put it into the new construction so it's efficient. And so when you take it from the bucket of the renovation, we lower it and just put the necessities in so it can be used primarily for vehicle storage. And then the cost for the new construction is essentially adjusted accordingly, because some of those spaces that were in that renovation, they have to be pulled out so we could keep it just vehicle and equipment storage, and we had to pull those over to that new building. So it is a little bit of moving around, and that's not where our significant savings were achieved in the last go here. It was really through some other reductions on the site and some other approaches to minimizing some space within the building. Ultimately, we've reduced the square footage of the building over time since we began this process as well.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, yeah, I see the numbers working. I see how you've tried to lower the numbers. I just still have major concerns about this investment. There's no doubt we have a need. We need a new DPW, but we also have a lot of other needs in the community as well. Our water and sewer, water pipes are bursting. We get brown water through the community. We're making investments to try to repair that, get it done. The economy has changed. Recent construction projects continue to rise. I'm not confident that this will come in on budget of what you're estimating right now. I just have you can't tell me, I can't, and we don't know what this will take when it goes a couple of years from now. Making this type of investment to do something just after we made a major investment in building an elementary school, we made a major investment in building a new fire station, we made a lot of investments in the town. Trying to build everything at the same time is a major concern to me, especially when we have failing infrastructure throughout the town with constant water breaks. You did bring up the point that, they are out there maintaining all those things, maintaining it quite frequently. If we replaced it, it knocks down the maintenance. So making that investment in, replacing a lot of the water lines is a big benefit to doing it as well. I just want to make sure that as we're balancing the budget, we just had a presentation a couple of minutes ago talking about housing and the concern in this community about how much the community is paying for 50% of being what they're paying. We get senior housing that's showing that the numbers are, they're paying a lot to stay in this community. Our rents and our cost to live in this community is quite high. And some of the things just aren't, like I said, we keep making investments in building things, which is needed. I mean, I'm not in opposition to building a DPW. I think we need certain facilities. Building it all, like I said, we just made an investment there. We made an investment in the schools. We made an investment in the town. I just don't know how much we can do year after year after year and still maintain our infrastructure as well. So it's just a concern. I see what we're going. The residents will have the final say in October when we go to town meeting. I thank you for trying to do the numbers. I love the fact that it's going down. I'd love to see it continue. I'd like to see you come back and say, you know what, we've looked at this again, and we try to bring the number down even more and just keep it going. It's gone down 6 million since last August. I'd like to see it go down another 10 million before it goes to town meeting. But, I understand cost to cost. And every construction project that I've seen recently have been quite a bit over budget because of what's going on. Supply, demand, can't get things. And so I'm not confident that we would actually be able to build it at the estimate that you're giving today.
Yeah, and so just, I absolutely understand your concern. That's a decision for the select board and the community, as you mentioned. And our goal has been to really work to come up with the most efficient concept there is, while making it a building that will serve the community for many, many years. With regard to pricing, certainly that continues to be a concern. That's why I'm pleased that we are going to be opening up bids on actual DPW facilities that we can then gauge it against this chart to see where it is. And within that 28 million, we have built in some significant contingencies. If the market were to settle down and contractors get more hungry and they get more aggressive, then there would be a hope that during bidding, you might be able to see some savings. But considering where we are today and the future of the economy, it's really uncertain. I wouldn't count on necessarily that price going down, but we do feel that we have built in sufficient contingencies. And in fact, before town meeting, we'll actually go through and do a very detailed cost estimate, not just a high-level cost estimate on a cost per square foot basis. This will be broken down. We're developing plans so we can send it to an independent estimator, and then he'll be able to provide us with updated costs before town meeting.
Appreciate that.
Sure.
All right, I'll just add a couple of comments because we're not going to resolve this evening. And as Mr. Kratman mentioned, obviously this is a town meeting decision. But to my recollection, all the major building that we've done has been, at least under the current management team, on time and on budget, the biggest being the high school. I think the current school is on track to be financially within the numbers that were predicted. The fire station, similar. So I think we've developed a pretty solid track record. And while I appreciate Mr. Kratman's concerns, and I share them in some respects, I also think that the one element that is missing from the discussion tonight is the way we're going to pay for this, or propose to pay for it, which is very different, and it potentially is less intrusive to the taxpayer. There's still a cost, no doubt about that, but the manner in which we're going to do this potentially is unique in our experience and offers an opportunity. And it is just that, it's an opportunity. So we'll have to put that discussion aside for another day. But I want to commend the lot of you, all of you. There are people that are not in the room tonight who've been involved with this project. To come in here in this environment and say you worked hard to reduce the cost by 25% is quite an accomplishment, in my opinion. And I know it took radical change, some amputation and stuff to get there. But what I believe it did is it forced those hard decisions to be made about what's necessary as opposed to what's wanted. And that got us to a number that I believe is certainly realistic and I believe is attainable. And we share, I'll drop another kernel on the table, another concern that this board set a goal around is the water infrastructure, right? And the needs that exist that Mr. Kratman just stated. But I don't believe that they're mutually exclusive. I think we have an obligation at this table to look at all of the issues and not eliminate one against another. We can't do that. We've never done that as a community. So I think there's a lot to consider in the equation, and I would just encourage people to keep an open mind and wait until they see the final baked product, and then we can have a more detailed discussion. But I want to thank you for the effort. And certainly the presentation, and I'm very jealous of your skills with the PowerPoint. And I could use some of that training in my work experience, so thank you for that.
Sure thing.
Let me just offer, the town manager's been, this is probably one topic that I would venture a guess keeps him up once in a while at night, so we'd be remiss if we didn't offer him an opportunity to offer any comments that you feel are appropriate at this time.
I mean, the only thing I would mention and comment on is, one, we've been working on this project for, I don't know how many years. It's a long time. It's been in the capital budget for a long time. We've looked at different ways of approaching it. We felt we were there prior to COVID with the full program that we wanted to bring forward because the costs were right. It's something that we undertook this project after the failed debt exclusion that we tried some time back. And it was really the Board of Selectmen that directed us to stop putting Band-Aids on this project and come back with a real project. And that's what we did. And that's what we have been doing with at the time, the support of the board. We worked over the last 4 years to set aside funding within the debt service budget to be able to fund this project within the tax levy and not do a debt exclusion as the selectmen asked. Each year we've set the money aside. We set the money aside this past May, which was specifically voted on by the residents during discussion of the budget. And we're going to set further money aside to fund the project based on the increase that we're seeing in interest rates. We've done everything that we can that we've been asked to do, that we need to do to get this project moving forward. This is really one of the last buildings we need to address, other than looking at the the possibility and down the road of the elementary schools that exist. But this is a project that we're not looking to do just because we want a new building. We're looking to do this project because it is an absolute need. We have a safety issue down at that facility with the people who work there every day, especially the mechanics. We have an inefficient building that's costing us money. So this is a priority to us because of its need, not because we just feel like doing it. And this team has put together a product after many discussions with the board, with each other, with staff, and we feel like we are there. And we will hope to bring it forward at town meeting and gain support of the selectmen and gain support of the town because we did it the way everyone has asked us to do it. So I think it was a great presentation, and we're going to continue to see if we can reduce the price. It's going to be difficult because we really have reduced the program down a great deal, but we'll continue to do that and see where the cost estimate lies as we go into town meeting. But we're bringing it forward within the levy. And I want to say, when we come forward at town meeting this year, we are addressing other needs of the community. We have not sacrificed anything for this project. We will be bringing forward additional staffing for police, additional staffing for fire, additional staffing for the DPW. We're going to invest in roads, invest in sidewalks. We are going to be doing the other things that are needed in this community. So it's not as if we're doing this project and impacting negatively other things we do. We are truly doing a lot of the things this board wants us to do, the residents want us to do, and it's hard to believe where we've come from to where we are, but we are going to be there. So, didn't mean to want a soapbox.
Very good. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we've made it through the first third of our agenda. That brings us to residents portion of our meeting. I see a number of people in the audience, so just by a show of hands, are there residents who wish to speak tonight on any item? I see one hand. I see, sir? Okay. So, ma'am, if you want to go first, just grab that podium and microphone, and I ask you, try to stay within just a few minutes for us, be right to the point, and we appreciate your patience. But give us your name and your address for the record.
My name is Dina Castiglia. I live at 51 Fieldstone Circle.
Thanks. Welcome.
So I'm here tonight because I, first of all, want to thank the Select Board in general. You guys have been out there helping us at 1323 South Street at every neck and every turn. And myself and my family, we appreciate all that you've done for us. The issues that are at hand are, for me at least, and a part of the neighborhood, is that we don't understand quite why there's been an allowance for, and this may not, I'm not sure if this is the proper venue, but I'm going to bring it up anyhow. Is there a way for us to put in some sort of an injunction against the business that's in Andover right now that's still operating against a cease and desist order? I realize that there's damage that's already been done as far as the aesthetics and the space between a residential area and an industrial area. But the business is still running on a daily basis. We understand that the gentleman that owns the property has taken it to Superior Court. My question personally is, why is he still being allowed to run his business if we have to wait until he goes to Superior Court? Is there an injunction or any kind of a process that we can instate to help the neighborhood that's really been impacted? I don't know, Chairperson, if you've seen any of the photos, I can make them available to you, to the entire board. But really, the other piece is, do we have any teeth from the town of Tewksbury to address the town of Andover in asking for their help in this situation? You know, I understand he's a businessman, and I don't want to prevent anyone from doing business. I'm a business person myself. But the impact that it's had on the residential area is significant. And there are safety issues, water runoff issues, home values, and aesthetics that are just really horrible. So I'm just hoping to get some advice from the select board as to what we have for any kind of help.
All right, let me do my best to at least, first of all, thank you for coming in. Thank you for offering your questions to us. And let me state that, that none of us here are experts in this area. So we're learning as we go as well. So I ask you to consider that. We have the benefit of an experienced professional as a town manager. We have the benefit of town council, and we have the benefit of other past experience through other communities that we can fall back on. I think you said something that's really important, and as a lawyer myself, I can appreciate this piece of it, is that it is in court. There's a court case, right? The individual has appealed a decision made by another community. And under our system of laws, until the court decides, there's really not much, I believe, that can be done to stop activity. They have the right to appeal, and they have the right to have their day in court, if you will. So in the end, I believe that the proper outcome will occur. That's my personal opinion. But I don't know that there's anything that can be done to accelerate that process. Certainly not from the town of Tewksbury, because we're talking, as I know you are well aware, about a property located in another community, a neighboring community. So we don't have any jurisdiction in terms of enforcement power or anything that goes to that particular parcel. So we have to rely on the goodwill of our neighbor to do the right things and take the right steps, which I believe they have attempted to do. I will note that in a few minutes, we're going to talk about sending correspondence from this board to the town of Andover, again urging them, and I stress the word again because this isn't new for us, right?
I know that, and that's why I think-
stressing to them that this is important, and we're asking them to step up and take care of issues, and maybe meet with some folks to at least explain where things are at, because their town council is involved, their government entity is involved. So we have to rely on that a little bit more than maybe we'd like. But that's the best I can offer. And I know it's not what you want to hear, but I want to stress
that there is some place or some way that there could be communication maybe between our community and Andover, just so that we could express our concerns. Not to blame anybody. I mean, things happen and we have no control over them. And we're trying to address an issue from behind what's already been done. But is there any way to work in unison with one another to come up with a solution that would work for everyone?
And I think we're trying to do that through the town manager and our town council. But again, it's a matter now that's in the courts, and there's not much that can be done to trump that, right? Because
so there is no availability to put any sort of an injunction in, which had been mentioned to me privately.
I don't know the answer to that question because I'm not an expert in that area, but I'm sure it's been explored, at least considered. I don't know the answer, but I don't believe so. And I do know that my colleagues, Mr. Kelly, Ms. Wellman in particular, have spent a fair amount of time talking to residents like yourself, I presume, and others, and they've
Absolutely.
conveyed the concerns.
And Mr. Sadwick?
Yeah, and they've conveyed all those concerns to the full board. So we're all in unison on this, I want to assure you. There's nobody at this table that isn't concerned about it and you know, uptight about the fact that it still is going on. But we've had other examples unrelated to that property with other topics in the past where patience is the operative word. We just have to let the system work, and it's not always easy to do when you're impacted on a daily basis. But I'm not sure there's much else that can be done. I will ask if Mr. Montori has any further color to add to my comments, but I don't think there is much more that we can offer.
So I will ask town council again if there's anything we can do in the form of an injunction. He'll be coming out Thursday, and I'll meet with him on it. We have been as active as we can be with the site. We've asked the police department to, you know, go by and check the activity, especially during the evening, which they have done. And they've reported to us on a weekly basis. The building commissioner has been in touch with the building commissioner in Andover to coordinate any inspections or any efforts on their part. We've been in touch with the health director in Andover every time we've received any complaints from the residents to ask that he go over and review the situation. Our conservation agent has been in touch with the conservation agent in Andover, and I know they have walked our property, that property, just to ensure compliance. We haven't heard any issues. So from that standpoint, we have worked closely with Andover, and we'll continue to do that, and Andover's been cooperative in that sense. We will seek a meeting again with Andover. It may be with just an internal meeting with their staff and our staff and a couple of board members to talk with them, bring questions to them for the residents, and any answers back to the residents we get. You know, we'll continue that type of communication, present any questions the residents have, answer any questions the residents we have, as many as you have. We're not, you know, just reach out to us. But again, we just don't, and I've asked this to our staff directly, is there anything Andover can do that we think they're missing? And they said no. And I asked, is there anything we would be doing different? And they said no. So, you know, we've done everything possible. I will ask about the injunction to see if that's an option. But you know, it's just, again, waiting for the courts to go through this process. And, you know, unfortunately, we have an owner of the property that, you know, isn't going to be patient with everyone else. He's going to be difficult, as he has been, which is always the case when a person doesn't get what they want in regard to zoning or, you know, special permits. But Andover's done everything they can, and they've supported the community and the residents in denying the special permit, which was a big deal because they could have gone the other way.
It was.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Kelly, through Mr. Montori, I mean, I see it a little bit differently as far as Andover. You know, I've been deeply involved with the residents, and thank you coming out this evening. It happened to be on the agenda where we're going to write a letter. We'll see if we approve it. I think it's probably going to be favorable. All the residents want is a meeting. So we'd understand that the permit got denied, but I've seen more pictures and more videos. Now it's their quality of life. So they feel like they're banging their heads against the wall, and so do I. So hence the letter, hopefully we'll get it approved. All they want to do is a sit down with the direct abutters. We can say 200 feet, 300 feet, to ask those very questions. I think it's pretty simple. So I don't think Andover's been too receptive of that, and hence we have to literally send a letter on behalf of this board. So anyhow, again, where you can see there's the effort there, we're trying, at the end of the day, hopefully we'll get a little bit of movement to have that meeting to get some of these questions answered. Because we have sent questions directly from the abutters to Andover, and we literally get a half a sentence which to me is unacceptable. So anyways, I'll pause. I've been deeply involved, so I'm not going to try to get emotional. You did a very good job of not getting emotional, but I understand it's just it's impacting the quality of life now, and we're just looking for answers. That's all. So
Well,
thank you.
there are some specific concerns about water runoff issues and habitation of the animals that have been displaced and those types of things, and the proximity to the homes and what we're forced to look at on a daily basis instead of what was our beautiful landscape. But again, I thank you for your time and your consideration and for all of the efforts that the town is assisting us with Andover. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for the manner in which you're discussing it with us tonight. Anyone else, sir? You okay? Okay. All right. Anyone else, sir? Just do me a favor and go to that microphone. Thank you.
How you doing today?
Can I have your name and address, sir?
So my name's Frank Tamburello, and I live at 25 Fieldstone Circle. These are all my neighbors here. And I saw how they've been impacted. I'm a little bit further down on the street, but I mean, we're all impacted. I mean, the values of their homes must have dropped $100,000 because no one would want to buy a house next to a junkyard, you know, compared to what it was. And I'm just trying to understand, you know, in this world of laws and everything, Section 11, Mass General Laws, I mean, a total violation of it. I mean, you can read it word for word. You know, notice to abutters, 300 feet around. None of that was given, and we all know that. I mean, you guys have heard this, you know it, and all that stuff. But I'm just trying to understand why it takes so long, obviously, in all this legal process when he didn't go to his abutters, he didn't get the special permit, and it is really the town. It took. I mean, you kind of got to defend your borders a little bit from other towns. I mean, you protect a perimeter around this whole town, and other towns probably you clash. I see, and you really want to make sure that the right things are done. And I mean, how does he? What's to pay for that? I mean, like you said, the damage is done. I don't know. I'm trying to understand it myself because it seems like a slap on the wrist for such a large scale issue isn't enough. I'm just trying to figure that out. I mean, it's. I'm just baffled by it. You know, I mean, obviously we have a lot of issues, not just their property values, but our street is a wind tunnel now. You know, I've seen trees, after he's cut down, I've seen trees snapping in the distance because the wind's just howling through. Obviously, you know, the traffic's a little heavier. I go to work in the morning and I got people bombing 40 miles an hour to go to this yard. And I know that Dean has told you and everyone's spoke and you've talked to other community members, but, you know, when you violate Section 11, Mass General Laws, I read it pretty much word for word, and everything he did was a violation of it. But you know, who wins that battle? You know what I mean? I'm trying to figure that out.
Well,
So.
I personally believe the good guys will prevail.
I hope so.
It takes some time.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
it's just a process, and
Yeah.
I wish there were easier answers, but there really aren't. So,
Yeah.
So I will just end with this. I know this board is very concerned. I know our town management is very concerned about this subject matter.
Yeah.
And no stone, you just heard, no stone has been left unturned
Right.
on this end of the deal. So
Yeah.
we're going to continue to monitor it. Mr. Kelly made mention of our request of the town is to have a discussion with the abutters through the town of Andover.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see how they respond and react to our correspondence. And as the town manager mentioned, maybe there's some intermediary steps that can be taken
Yeah.
to help to foster that. But just
Right.
be assured that we're doing everything we can. We're keeping our eyes and ears on it, and we'll continue to do so. Okay? I wish I could say more, but
Yeah.
all
It's a
right.
process.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, can I just make a comment?
Ms. Wellman?
Thank you. Just briefly, I wanted to thank Dina and all of you for coming out tonight. And I want to echo what my colleague, Mr. Kelly, said. It's encouraging that Andover has done a lot of work to mitigate this problem. And the ZBA heard you. They came out and did a site walk, and
We were very thankful that they came out.
and they did a great job. And the process is incredibly frustrating because all these violations are happening, and as long as he appeals, he seems to be able to continue to operate. So I'm encouraged that Mr. Montori will explore the idea of an injunction. I'm not sure that's necessarily possible in this circumstance, but it's worthwhile to investigate. And then, as Mr. Johnson said, with this letter, we hope to, encourage them to come to a meeting with the residents or representatives of the residents might be another option. But I appreciate your tone, your patience for what must be, and I understand to be a very frustrating situation that's affecting your homes, your home values, and your day-to-day lives in this town. So thank you very much, and my phone is always available, and you're always welcome to call me, and your neighbors as well.
May I ask one more question?
Just do me a favor and go to the microphone, okay?
So I know that there was an order of conditions put in place, and correct me if I'm wrong, I apologize if I am, but between Tewksbury and Andover, I know that there was some sort of an emergency meeting that took place prior to the zoning board of approvals, and there were conditions put in place so that Tewksbury was assisting their residents to be safer from the allowances that were taking place on the land. Are those being upheld by the town of Andover?
I could probably
And
address.
is there a way or a check and balance that we could find out if they are being upheld?
Steve, do you want to?
Being that the permit was denied, those conditions don't apply. They don't apply. So had it been approved and Andover accepted those conditions, which when we were talking with the owner and also with Andover, it seemed like those conditions were something that would have been acceptable. Again, that zoning board of appeals made its determination based on the case as it was presented before them. So when they said no, the conditions went away.
I understand. Okay, so that means he can operate at any time frame that he wants according to you?
Well, it's kind of in it's a stay right now where he can continue to operate until it's adjudicated through the court. So that's where we are, unfortunately.
Thank you for clarifying
Sure.
that, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other residents on any other topics? Okay, I want to thank you all for your patience. We had a lot to cover so far this evening. We're now about 35% through our agenda, so we'll keep moving.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
There's a resident who has a question.
I'm sorry.
Please do me a favor and go to the microphone, man. I didn't see you raise your hand. I apologize. Okay.
Hi, I'm Laura Hume. I live at 60 Fieldstone Circle.
Okay.
And they are directly behind me.
Yeah.
So we see everything. I was just curious on the agenda. It said that the town of Andover, did you receive a town of?
No, it's a typo, ma'am. It's a letter from us to the town
Oh, okay.
that we're going to discuss in about 5 minutes.
Okay, so, all right, that's my
Yeah,
question.
we didn't
I
receive correspondence. We're going to
Okay.
issue correspondence.
All right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay, let's move to new business. The first item pertains to Starbucks Corporation at 1800 Main Street, or soon to be at 1800 Main Street. And I guess there's a representative from Starbucks here, right?
Yes, sir.
So if you don't
Thank you,
mind.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
board members. My name's Daniel Brennan. I handle permits and licenses for Starbucks.
Excellent. Welcome.
Thank you.
Where are you based out of?
I'm actually out of Andover.
Okay. Okay. All right. So you're here to request approval of a common victual license?
Yes, sir.
For Starbucks?
Yep.
It looks like, and I appreciate your cover letter that you attached You gave some good detail on the seating, outdoor patio, hours of operation. Are you still on track to potentially open in late September?
I believe so.
Excellent.
September 27th is the date right now.
Okay, very good. All right, I think everything, at least from my review, seemed to be in order, but let me ask if my colleagues have any questions or need further information. If not, can I ask for a motion to approve the request?
Second.
All right, everyone's getting tired, so we have a motion made and we have a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Your
Appreciate
work
it.
is done.
Congratulations, thank you.
Welcome to the town. We look forward to seeing you. Okay, that brings us to a letter to the town of Andover relative to 1323 South Street. And I believe the town manager previously distributed a draft of that letter to the board members. I don't necessarily feel it's incumbent that we read it. We all have seen it. If there's any comments from the board, any edits to just, typographical or anything, we can consider that. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion to approve the letter so we can send the letter out. And I believe this is from the board. And in light of the significance of the letter, I think we should probably have all board members sign it.
So I have it.
Yep, okay.
So moved.
So, all right, so you're moving to approve the letter?
Please.
Okay, thank you. And I have a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that chair votes aye, that would be unanimous. So as soon as that's available, we'll have that signed and get that out the door. Okay, folks?
Thank you very much
All right.
Thank you, guys.
for all of your hard work and efforts on this.
Well, we'll keep working at it.
Thank you.
Okay, we have to make actually two appointments to the Elementary School Building Committee this evening. On the agenda initially was an appointment of Eric Ryder. You all know at this board that Mr. Ryder was the planning board representative to the Elementary School Building Committee. He recently resigned from the planning board. The planning board took a vote to designate their spot for his benefit and asked the select board to approve him in the capacity of being a designee of the planning board to see the project through. That's the first individual. And then we added, it got lost in the shuffle of our interviews last night, but this morning we revised the agenda. The new Assistant Superintendent of Schools, Lori McDermott, has been asked to take a seat at the table on the committee representing the school administration. And we'd like to make sure that we can do that to comply with the committee requirements and structure. So I have those two names to put before you, and I'd ask, we can take them individually or together.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to appoint Eric Ryder and Laurie McDermott to the Elementary School Building Committee.
All right, we have a motion made in a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes in the affirmative, so that would be unanimous. Thank you, Mr. Kratman. Okay, let me skip item 9 for just a few moments. We'll come back to that, and that pertains to a discussion of potential warrant articles. And let me go to the town manager. Do you have anything else besides that topic, Mr. Montori?
I think there was a town council invoice.
Yep.
In the amount of, you just wanted me to do my report? Or did you, yeah. So in the amount of $4,972.50 for July 1 through July 15th, and I would ask the board to recommend the board approve.
Make a motion to approve the invoice for the town council from July 1st to July 15th as presented.
All right, we have a motion made in a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll vote in the affirmative as well.
And then the only quick thing, I just wanted to go back. Did the board, in their motion to approve the sale of the lots to Habitat Build, authorize me to sign the documents?
Okay, can we have a motion to authorize the town manager to execute the documents that we previously voted on?
So moved.
Okay, I have a motion made in a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'll vote in the affirmative as well, so that would be unanimous. Anything else, Mr. Montori?
That is it.
Okay. All right. So just quickly, in the packet of materials and on the agenda, our crack staff in the office is taking steps to clean up any minutes that haven't been formally adopted or approved by this board. Some, we believe, may have been, but we want to, out of an effort to be completely diligent around it, we want to take another vote to approve the minutes listed on the agenda. I know you all have had a chance to review them, so we won't go through them individually. I'd like to ask for a vote on the slate. You can see that the dates involved are April 23, 2019, July 16, 2019, August 13, 2019, September 10, 2019, November 5, 2019, May 19, 2020, February 9, 2021, May 25, 2021, September 14, 2021, June 7, 2022, and June 28, 2022. So unless there are questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve all of those minutes in one vote.
I'll make a motion to approve all the
Okay, I
minutes as
have a
presented.
motion made and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That would be unanimous. We killed a lot of trees.
I was going to have you read that back, but I was just being I was being a jokester.
There you go. All right, so that brings us back to town meeting warrant articles, and then we'll move to board member reports and close out the evening. So, Mr. Montori, do you want to offer any opening comments?
Just from the administration standpoint, we're going to have the standard articles we've had at town meeting. We're going to raise and appropriate funds into the budget to adjust for unfunded priorities within the budget, as I mentioned earlier, looking to add staff to the DPW, police department, fire department, funding of roads and sidewalks, additional funding for debt service for the DPW facility. So there'll be an article for that. We'll have an article to transfer funds from certified free cash to address equipment and one-time capital items. We'll have a bond authorization article for the DPW facility. We're going to have a CPA article for additional funding for the skateboard park based on the cost of equipment, now that we're getting closer to doing that project. A retail marijuana article, an update to our stormwater bylaw, an unpaid bill article, and we're going to repurpose one of the articles we had at a previous town meeting for vehicles to just move money from one vehicle to another. So that's what we're looking at the moment. There may be additions as we get closer to finalizing the warrant, but those are the items that we'll bring forward, and most of them are standard to a fall town meeting. Other than that, the agenda item is really if the board has any articles that they would like to add to the warrant.
What's the filing deadline for warrant articles, Mr. Montori?
Friday the 19th.
8/19?
Yep, 4:30.
Okay.
At this point, we've not seen any petition articles.
And my colleagues can probably help me with this, or you can, but do we have another board meeting before that date?
You don't, unless you have a special meeting.
Okay, thank you. Okay. All right. Any comments, questions from board members?
Maybe it makes sense to maybe have a special meeting. I mean, we typically do it, right? I mean, because our backs are against the wall. What's our next one? September 13th. But, we can work through the board like we always do.
Yeah, we're going to obviously review all the warrant articles before the town meeting,
Okay,
as we typically do, right, in September. So,
And one other item I'm not sure if it needs to be a warrant article or just in the budget update article, but I have developed, and I need to finalize before I just have the board review it, as changes to the elected official salaries.
Yep.
So I did come up with something, and I'll send it out at the end of the week.
Okay.
For this town?
Yes.
Is there, I assume we're going to be able to go forward with the retail marijuana articles as well?
Yep, that's on there. Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's part of our items.
Okay.
So really, it's if the board has any articles they want to add, there's going to be plenty of time from now until town meeting to review any articles.
Right. Ms. Wellman?
Thank you. We had spoken briefly, but not detailed, about doing something with regard to requiring EV charging at high-density or multifamily developments on a go-forward basis, and maybe adapting some language. And I didn't know if there was conversation more about that, and when we can do that.
So-
It's a small change.
Yep. No, we've had that conversation. That's something that the assistant town manager is working on.
Would that be something that might come up for this town meeting, or?
Nope, we hope to bring it, unless he looks at it and it's a huge undertaking, but I think the plan is to bring it forward this town meeting.
It would be a huge change. Thank you.
Okay, so let me just try to recap what I think I'm hearing, and if people disagree, we'll take course correction. It sounds like the town manager has heard some of the concerns that we've had around various topics. It sounds like he's in the process of drafting warrant articles. The deadline is August 19 at 4:30 p.m. We can do one of two things. This board can meet before August 19 and review any drafts that it deems appropriate, or we can wait until our typical meeting in September leading up to town meeting, when we'll have the full warrant. We will have the benefit of the Finance Committee public hearing, and we'll stake out our position on the various draft articles that are presented in the warrant. It sounds to me like there's option A or option B. So I would ask for some guidance from my colleagues on what their preference is.
Mr. Chairman, with regard to that, I think it behooves this board to meet before the warrant is closed, because it's in many ways the board's presentation to town meeting. The warrant is, and we sign that warrant, and so I think it's efficacious for this board to weigh in on it, even if there may not be any changes, before it goes to the Finance Committee. Finance Committee, so as we're hearing, they have an important role for town meeting, but because it's effectively our warrant, I think that procedurally, and for the sake of a future September meeting, it might be a shorter meeting. We aren't doing it.
Yeah, we'll have to do two then, because we won't have necessarily the full warrant before the 18th, or 19th rather.
Right.
Because private citizens can file warrant articles at the deadline, right? So, so we'd have to take action again on a second bite at the apple. But that's fine if our colleagues want to meet and.
I see it a little bit differently. I mean, the Finance Committee has a public hearing, so typically the board historically has allowed them to go first out of respect. They have the public hearing, and then we follow. So I could go either way.
Yep.
And I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Kelly. I totally get that. I don't think it's disrespectful for the board to review them and maybe not give our opinion, and wait for FinCom to give their opinion on but to review them and say, maybe this is missing, or maybe we should hold on this as a strategic approach. Mr. Kelly, so that would be my letter for
Mr. Crabman, do you have an opinion?
I prefer to have the Finance Committee review it as well, to have an opportunity, have an open meeting, have residents come speak as well, just then have their input as well, to have open meetings, listen to it. I think we can, I think we've pretty much discussed what we're doing on the warrant. I don't have a problem with that, and then having our meeting afterwards. But like I said, if we have a meeting, I'll gladly attend, but I think...
Okay. Mr. Mackey, how about you?
Don't have any strong opinions. I think both options are valid, given what we've done in the past waiting for FinCom. I think that makes sense. It may be worth earmarking a date, and when we get the drafts from Mr. Montori, if there are no comments, we can just scrap that meeting.
Okay. Is that acceptable?
Yeah, I'm good either way.
Okay, let's grab our calendars and we will find a date. That ought to be a good one. Let's see.
I recommended that with the high likelihood that I don't believe we'll actually need it, is the hope.
How's next Tuesday, August 16?
I unfortunately cannot make that.
No? No good?
I have a business meeting that night, day,
Monday, the 15th.
to Monday the 15th.
Will that work for you?
Doesn't matter to me. Just tell them to be there.
Okay. Is everybody okay with that? All right, let's put a placeholder in. Can we start at 6? Is that too early for people, or is that okay?
One question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
So if the intent is to do it Monday, when should we expect drafts to be able to
Yeah,
review? 'Cause
good
that's-
question.
That's
Yep.
the intent is to review them beforehand, so if there is any changes needed, we can navigate that?
I will.
If you want any extra time, we can try for the
No.
17th.
No, I'll have something Thursday, okay?
So does it make sense for us to have feedback to you if that meeting is needed by Friday?
Yeah. We have to post the meeting on Monday by Thursday evening, right?
We'll post it.
Yeah, post it now. Yeah.
And based on, you might just be better off meeting. And I'll have the warrant still to you Thursday and just meet.
Yeah.
And go over it. Even if you have no comments, it's a half-hour meeting. If you have comments, it's an hour meeting.
Yeah.
Just plan on it.
Yeah.
I'm worrying now about open meeting law. Commentary coming back and forth.
Yeah. So let's do the meeting.
Just do the meeting.
Okay.
I'll have the drafts by the end of the day Thursday.
Monday, 6 or 7 p.m., folks?
6 is fine.
6 p.m.? Okay. All right. All right, Monday at 6. And what I want to stress for those watching is that the tradition has been the selectmen take the full warrant leading up to town meeting. They take the benefit of the finance committee as well. And we will do that effort anyways. This is more of an informal discussion, like a working session around the warrant, is the way I'll treat it. I'm not going to call for votes on recommend or no recommend, okay?
What I won't
So we're
have,
on the same
I won't have final drafts on
Right.
the zoning because the assistant town manager will be on vacation this week.
Yeah.
But I'll put in there that there'll be a retail marijuana article that I think he's already kind of previewed with the board, and he's looking at the EV charging infrastructure article.
Okay.
But everything else, we should be ready to go.
All right. So I just would ask my colleagues, you always do, but do your homework, right? You'll get the email from the town manager with that information. Do your homework and come to the table, and we can talk about what he's presented, and hopefully the meeting will be short and sweet. Okay? All right. So we'll ask, you can post that for us tomorrow.
Will do.
All right. All right, that brings us to the last item on the agenda, which would be board member reports. Mr. Kelly, do you have anything?
I am good, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mackey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One quick update. As of last week, we did officially enter into the agreement with Dragos, which is a world-renowned cybersecurity company. So Tewksbury will be receiving roughly $95,000 worth of services and technology free of charge.
Excellent. Good. Anything else? No? Okay, Ms. Wellman?
NIMCOG did not meet in July. We're meeting next week. And we had a tour of the elementary school that's under construction. Everybody was invited. And I'm going to invite you.
Okay. That brings us to Mr. Kratman.
Reuse Committee, we have been meeting frequently, twice a month. We're hoping to get some recommendations. I'd like to thank the board for helping us get a couple of new members on there because we've been having difficulties to meet the quorum. And we elected a couple new members. I see the chair is here. So, I think we're going to move forward and hopefully have some recommendations to the board by the end of the year.
Okay, I just have a couple of items I want to mention, and it's really more to kind of round out some of the recent activities that this board has undertaken. So the first thing I want to mention is last night we had an untelevised board meeting that was very well attended by numerous applicants for various committees. We initially met jointly with the Planning Board to fill the vacancy that was created by Mr. Ryder's resignation from the Planning Board, and following the statutory scheme to do so, the joint meeting between the Planning Board and the Select Board resulted in the election of Mr. Jonathan Champa as the new member of the Planning Board. And he will serve in that capacity until next April, when the annual town election will take place, and the position that he now occupies will be on the ballot for the remainder of its term. And in addition to that, there will be another Planning Board seat on the annual town meeting ballot that would be traditionally scheduled to be on the ballot at that time. So residents should expect that they'll have 2 votes. The terms might be slightly different. One is to fill out an existing term to expire, and the other would be for a full 3-year term. So I want to make people aware of that. I also want to advise residents that this board conducted about 12 or 15 interviews last evening for various committees. Mr. Kratman just referenced we made appointment to the Reuse Committee, we made appointments to the Open Space Committee, Historic Commission, Cultural Council, a number of bodies throughout the community, and we can't do that without the active participation of residents who raise their hand to volunteer. Unfortunately, not everybody was appointed, and that's just a numbers game. We are limited in some cases to certain census numbers on committee structure and membership. Some of that's by choice here locally, some of it's by statute. So I want to thank all of the people who raised their hand, and I want to encourage those who did not get appointed to not give up on Tewksbury, to come back to the table and raise their hand again, because we undoubtedly need their talents along the way. And I appreciate that they put this board in a difficult position of having to make choices, because we're far better off when there are more than enough people to fill those roles than not having people interested in serving their community. So I want to thank them for that. I also want to just give a very brief summary on behalf of the board. We met again on August 3rd to conduct a working session. That meeting itself was also not televised, but we did have an individual attend to witness it. But the intention was for this board to determine for the current term its priorities or goals that the board wanted to strive to accomplish. And one of the important elements is that we all recognize that there's an annual town election every April, and the constitution of this board could potentially change with the results of an election. So we were very cognizant of the fact that we don't want to bind a subsequent board who might be made up of different people sitting at this table to anything beyond the period of time from now until April. That having been said, after all of the discussion, and my colleagues and I and the town manager and assistant town manager brought at least 3 goals to the table for discussion. So that was about 18 goals. And no organization, in my opinion, in 8 months can accomplish 18 goals. So our goal was to distill that wish list, if you will, down to the most important goals that the board could find consensus around. And I will tell the community what those 4 goals are. But what I want to stress is I'm not giving them in order of importance. I'm just noting them as 4 goals because we effectively felt that they were all equally important and needed to be attended to. So I'm just going to read them in order. Again, I want to stress they're not in order of importance or magnitude or priority, but they're all important to us. So the first one dealt with the topic of water and the water infrastructure, and the conversation centered around pipe breaks and aging infrastructure within the street system that supplies our community with water. And our goal in the short term, right, is to conduct an analysis and refine the business plan that we already have around funding and actions to improve the water infrastructure system. Mr. Montori and his staff have had a plan in place as part of our capital improvement plan, but this board asked that we revisit that, beef it up, focus on identifying the full scope of the problem so that we can continue to chip away at that as we go further out of next year and years outward. So that was one very important focus area that's a goal for this board. Number two, ironically, was the subject of a fair amount of our discussion this evening, and that had to do with the commitment by this board to improve the picture around affordable and sustainable housing in the community. And I think that we recognize the need to get out from under the 40B rock, if you will, and take control of our own destiny as a community. And to do so, that means that we need to focus on that topic. We have to have a good housing production plan. We have to have a commitment in the community to focus on when there is development to include affordable housing units within that. It's part of the zoning bylaw changes that were made. So it's kind of a revisitation or a recommitment on the part of this board to improving and adding to our affordable and sustainable housing stock. We hear comments from the community repeatedly around that topic. So that is another very important and high priority goal of this board. Number three was completion of the Route 38 corridor, and the really focused on finishing the road improvements, the sidewalk improvements, the traffic mitigation that's attendant with the continued work along Route 38. That also includes, we obviously need to secure funding for the next section to finish the roadway, or sections to finish the roadway. But that's a high priority that we want to continue to ensure it gets attention at the state level and through NIMCOG, our partners, in trying to move funding and get on the right list to make sure that becomes a reality. And then last but not least, and again, no inference here that this is no less important, is a continuation of building a better relationship with the state hospital. They're the largest employer in the community. They're a large user of our services. And at times we've had difficulty or stress on our relationship. So we're looking to improve and work with the state hospital leadership and the state itself to build up that relationship and to look for new ways and approaches to secure offset funding for the services that the state avails itself to, provided by the town of Tewksbury, and there are many of them. So we're hopeful that we can pick up on that and continue to work with the state hospital in a collaborative manner to benefit the town of Tewksbury and its residents. So after, I think it was about a 2-hour meeting, 2.5-hour meeting, there were many other topics discussed. I'm sure if any residents came to the table, they'd have a list themselves that may or may not align with what I just summarized. But be assured that it was a robust discussion, a collaborative effort. And at the end of the day, the 5 board members all endorsed these 4 priorities for the next 8 months or so. Some of them may take longer to achieve, and we'll have to leave it to our successors, however many there are, to evaluate that and either redefine the goals or take them up and continue to work on them. But that's the summary, and hopefully residents will come to appreciate what we're going to be committed to in the next number of months on their behalf. So we'll put a summary of that together, and we'll get that posted somewhere on our website as our board's goals for the remainder of the term. And we'll hopefully keep a scorecard ourselves against our progress against them. And I would be remiss if I didn't appreciate and thank the town manager and the assistant town manager, because it's easy for us to set goals. More often than not, they have to actually execute on them. So we know we're relying on their good work and leadership to help foster the success that we hope to achieve. And we're gonna need them to use the talents of their staffs to help move the rock up the hill on each of those. So we look forward to further discussion. And I want to thank my colleagues for the manner in which they approached the meeting and contributed to the meeting as well. So those are my comments this evening, and I hope those accurately summarized our discussion. If I misspoke in any way, I'll give you a chance to make correction.
Perfect.
Okay. All right. So thank you for your patience while I ran through that. Let me ask at this time if there's a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion made and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Any opposed? We are adjourned.